This episode of Off My Shelf contains coarse language and adult conversation. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, my name is Tracy James and welcome to Off My Shelf, a podcast about movies that are, well, off my shelf, where we go through my DVDs and talk about the movies in my collection. In this episode, Paolo Vergara and Carson Choi from The Fan and the Critic join me in talking about the Star Wars prequels that shook the Star Wars fandom and introduced a newish concept to cinema. Welcome!
Thanks for having us.
Super excited.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. I know we did a little chat before this, and yes, these movies have been talked about to death, but guess what? We're going to revive it and kill it again. It'll be fine. I think we're going to go in order, which is fine. But before we even get in there, I just want to ask you guys, when did you get into Star Wars, for example? Or when did you see, or both, when did you get into these movies specifically? Carson, did you want to start?
Sure. This is a bit of a big topic. So I don't remember when I first got into Star Wars in general. It was always just kind of around. Like, I assume my parents were fans and there was toys around and whatnot. But where it really started to become personal for me was Phantom Menace. When Phantom Menace first came out, I was 9 years old, which meant target audience, basically. And there was a lot of people that had preconceived notions of what Star Wars was and what it should be, and were therefore maybe a little bit disappointed by the movie. But that wasn't me. Like, I was more or less going into it fresh, going into a new franchise that I found my own love for at that time. And so what I remember most about Phantom Menace was just the craze and the hype around it. And this was back before you could buy tickets online. And so people would literally camp out around the block, sleep overnight, like on the sidewalk, just to get tickets, just to get a good seat at like that show. And obviously maybe that's why they were a little bit disappointed, because you put so much into it. But that summer, because I believe it came out in May, I kid you not, I think I went to see it in theaters 10 to 15 times. Me and my brother, like, once it came out to the matinee, like that summer when we were off school, you could go down for like $2 in an afternoon, go watch it. It was like every Tuesday we would go. So not exaggerating that I may have gone 15 different times, and I've rewatched it many times since then. Now, obviously, being 9 years old when it first grew up, was like around 12 years old when the second movie, 14 when the third one came out, started to mature and started to understand what people didn't like about it, started to become a little bit of a movie snob. And so I started, like, I think I've maintained kind of a love-hate relationship for the prequels, to the point that I still watch them all the time. Probably every couple of years I'll do a rewatch of all three movies. I've watched a lot of the cartoons that surround the prequel eras, and so I know a lot of the lore outside of the movies. And it's kind of an interesting topic that I'm sure we'll get into later, of what defines a good movie, because they're bad and I recognize that they're bad, but I rewatch them every couple of years and I enjoy them. So I don't know how I feel about them, but that's kind of my background. It's a big deal for me, as I guess what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Essentially, Carson watches these movies like I watch everything else.
Okay. I mean, I understand that completely, because it's true. Like, there are movies out there that I will defend until the day I die, and people are like, but they're bad. I'm like, yeah, they are, but I enjoy them. And that's, I think, like 98% of the time, that's what really matters, Sometimes I do get confused as to like how you could enjoy them, but yeah, it's a different thing. Paolo, what about you? Where did your fandom come from?
Yeah. So before I even get into that, Tracy, we should have warned you. This episode is probably going to be like 6 hours long.
Well, try your best not to do that, but we'll see what happens.
I will try. I think I wanted to start with a question for Carson. Did you start with the prequels, or did you watch the original trilogy first?
I'm pretty sure I would have watched the originals. We definitely had them on VHS at home. but
Okay.
I wouldn't say I would have like had them memorized or had like known all the characters when I went into the first one or went into
Okay.
Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Okay. It's got kind of the same with me because like I remember growing up. So in Ajax, it's back in the days where you had friends in the neighborhood and then you'd like bike to each other's houses and then just do whatever or like bike to like a mud hill and then just play outside. So I had a friend that I just met randomly in the neighborhood, um, and he put me onto Star Wars because I had no knowledge of it before then, and it just blew my little mind. So there, like, it started with the original trilogy, and I was like, I was into it. It's cool, but similar to Carson, like target. Well, I don't know about target audience. That's a little complicated when you think about what goes on in the Phantom Menace. But yes, essentially, I was the target audience as well. We're the same age, me and Carson. And yeah, I was super into it. Like the Anakin's backpack. They sold that at like Walmart or something. I bought it and I used it for school. It was not functional at all. I didn't watch it 15 times in the theater, but like it was close. And I was just like, I gobbled up all the merch, like Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer on Nintendo 64. I played the shit out of that. So yeah, I mean, like I was right in the sweet spot of when that movie came out, and then Episode 2 and Episode 3, I was just like on along for the ride ever since then.
Mhm.
The merchandising was a massive thing. I remember that summer Pizza Hut had like a thing going on where you get a large pizza and it came with like a little cardboard disc with the character's face on it. And like we made our parents get Pizza Hut so much that summer so I could collect all those characters.
Yeah. That's one thing Star Wars is known for, merchandising. They merchandise everything. No matter what movie, TV show, or whatever, they have it.
Oh yeah, they
Um,
create characters just for that purpose.
yeah, and they've said that. They're like, no, we put this in here for this reason, so that we can sell a toy. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it's by accident. But it works. They're gangbusters with their merchandising. Oh my God. Um, So, on my previous episode, I did mention that I don't remember where I first interacted with Star Wars, but it's like with Carson, it's just kind of been around my whole life, and I loved the original trilogy. When it comes to these movies specifically, the one memory I do have about watching these movies is when The Phantom Menace came out, people were losing their goddamn minds. They were just losing their minds. And I was in high school at the time, and I couldn't get tickets for opening night because this was when they were still doing midnight screenings on like the first day. So that so let's say it's coming, I can't remember what day came out on, but like if it comes out on the Friday, it's like midnight that night is the first airing, and you can see it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend in school who got her dad got her tickets, like was in the what didn't miss a day of work, went got her tickets. Great. My parents were not that cool about it. And I was like so jealous. I was like, oh, when you see it, just let me know how it is, blah blah blah. And I got a call at like 9:30 that night. And my friend was like, look, one of our friends can't come anymore. Did you want to come? And
Jackpot.
I had to beg the shit out of my parents to let me go. They're like, tomorrow's Friday. You have to wake up to go to school. It's a school at blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, this is a once in a lifetime thing. I could be there opening night. And they let me go. They dropped me off, met the parents, was like, okay, they seem safe. You know, let me go. And they were like second in line because there was no assigned seating. You had to be there to get a
Oh
seat.
yeah.
And they were like second in line, and I was losing it. They literally had security on the theater door, and when they opened the door, we took off like running, and we were like, no running in the theater. They're just yelling and screaming at us about it, and then we're like, we're cool, we're cool, we're cool. Turned corner, took off again. It was hilarious. And so we sat there and we watched the movie, and all of us walked out after, and I was there talking to my friend, and they're like, so it was good? And I was like, Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Kind of like
Uh,
what exactly happened just now type thing.
exactly. It was so confusing. And I definitely saw this in theater at least one more time. And the others I all saw in theaters opening night because I'm the kind of person, if I don't see it, I can't bitch about it, so I gotta watch it. That's why they keep making really bad movies because I'm like, well, I have to see it. It's fine. And but yeah, no, I'm not a fan. And after rewatching them today, I was like, oh, I'm still not a fan. Like, I honestly thought like it would have like grown on me after like getting into some of the cartoons and the outside lore of from the movies. But apparently that did not actually happen. So, yes.
So it wasn't enjoyable for you at all.
No, I will tell you, I watched Phantom Menace. So we're recording on a Thursday, and I like to watch them as close as possible to
Hmm.
the time of recording, so I remember all of the things. And so my plan was watch one Sunday, watch one Tuesday, sorry, watch one Monday, and then I had plans, and then watch one today. And I watched Phantom Menace on Sunday, and about, I don't know, about half an hour in, I was just like, oh, I think this is almost done. No, nowhere near done. And I was literally wanted to cry. And I was messaging my friend and all this. I'm like, come over and hang out with me as I watch it. She was like, she doesn't mind Star Wars. But she's not as big into as I am. But even she was like, no, I know these movies. I'm not watching these. And then I procrastinated and watched the second two today. Um, I finished the last one 5 minutes before we started, and I was just like, please finish. I just need you to end. And so the thing that kept me looking at it was picking apart all the things that contradict stuff that came in the original series movies and also stuff that came after. So, yes, that's what I did.
That is a pretty big problem, to be fair. But I think this is interesting, like your perspective at least, just because I think I don't know if I've met anyone who actually has such like a very just uh just plainly negative uh like experience with the prequels.
Mhm.
I think whenever like I talk about it with like Carson or just some of my other friends, it's like we know that they're bad, but like it's probably just off the strength of nostalgia, like just pure nostalgia and like
Mhm.
growing up as kids. I think that makes it okay.
Yeah.
Because I like there's so much to complain about, and we're gonna definitely get into that. But like when I'm watching it, like when I rewatched it again for this, like it's just a thing like that I do now. Like it's part of my life, so I'm totally fine with it. Like I can tell you exactly what like what bothers me. Like don't even well, we will get started on midichlorians, obviously, but
Of
like
course, we do. We have to get started on midichlorians. Oh my God, yes.
yeah, but I mean like it's like I said, it's just a thing. Like it's a staple of my life now. So
Yeah.
like
You just have
it
to,
gets the biggest pass.
yeah, I think it's one of those things you just have to accept now. You're like, it's part of canon, just go with it. It's fine. We will accept what it is. Sure. Yeah.
I think for me, it's hard to sort through, do I like it because there's a nostalgia factor versus is there something of value in it of itself that I actually do genuinely enjoy, even without the nostalgia? And like when you talk about the midichlorians and all the stuff that breaking canon confuses stuff, whatever, like I feel like the universe that George created, there's a certain passion to it. It's not just creating one linear story. It's not world building for the sake of world building. It has epic proportions. It has ideas and lots of fun things that are going around there. And a lot of them don't work, but you can feel something genuine about it. It doesn't feel like it was completely built in a boardroom just for merchandising and all stuff. Like I do feel like there's something fun that brings me into that world.
Okay, that I'll agree with. But you said world building for the sake of world building, going against midichlorians. I feel like that's world building for the sake of world building. Like I feel like it's one of those tidbits of information that add nothing to the story in any way and for no reason. And I'm like, you could literally cut. They mentioned midichlorians in this trilogy, I think, three times. And if you cut those lines out, it makes no difference to the story.
But
Like
that's why
none
for
at
me,
all.
like, it's not a problem because it's like it's three lines. Like it changes it's like it's a little backdrop of what the science of the Force is, but like it doesn't bother me. Like, yes, it's stupid if I think about it, but I don't have to think about it because it doesn't impact the plot. If there was like a whole background story where somebody was like trying to take midichlorians out of someone's blood and put it into other people, which by the way is actually a plot line in one of the cartoons, but we'll get away
Oh
from that. But
God.
like
Yeah.
you can ignore midichlorians. You don't have to focus on it. I think some people want to focus on it because they like to complain, but like I don't like it and I just don't think about it.
To be honest, it's not that I forgot about it. It's one of those like tidbits that's just like in the back of my mind that I ignore. And then when they said it in the movie, I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, metachlorians." Fuck. Like it was just one of those things that came back and I was like, "This is so stupid." And then I just sat there trying to just be like, it's a sentence, Tracy. Just ignore it."
But
And,
yeah, going on a bit of a tangent, like this is kind of what I love about the Clone Wars and some of those other series that happen as well, because they go so deep into the lore that something that's just like a throwaway sentence in a movie now becomes like a major plot line in another story. So in the Bad Batch, which is one of the most recent cartoons, there's a whole season that's about finding characters with a high M count. And they never say the word midichlorian, but you know that M stands for midichlorian. And it's just like just the silly ways that as soon as you say it, it's canon. And now you have to deal with it. And you
Yeah.
have to like explain like uh what is it called? Like when Han Solo mentions parsecs being like anyway, it's used out
Distance
of
Yeah.
context, but
versus
now it's like, well, now we have to write a story to explain that. And like there's so many instances of that in Star Wars where somebody said the wrong thing, it's now canon, and now they have to explain it with like a whole movie or a whole TV show.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. It
I mean,
happens
it's
all the
good
time.
and bad. It's good and bad. Like I appreciate it because like if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have like we wouldn't have that season of the Bad Batch, or we wouldn't have the Solo movie, which a lot of people didn't like, but I liked.
I
But
think it's a
I'm
perfectly fine movie.
yeah, me too.
Mhm.
But then like I'm like right in the middle, like when it comes to the midichlorian thing, just because like going back to what you said, you take it out of all three mentions, you remove them from the trilogy, nothing changes. You could have like you forget Jedi's like sense things. You could have easily just had Qui-Gon say, "I sense like the Force, like the strongest Force presence in this boy." But no, you had to like make up a whole random like thing
Mhm.
that you'll never mention again in six movies because
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it
because
doesn't make any sense.
but that's the thing, in the original series, people, well, Jedi's like even Darth Vader and Obi-Wan was like, I sense the Force in this kid. Or like Yoda says, the Force is strong with this one. No mention of metachlorians or anything. And it was
It's
acceptable. The
enough.
way they structured it, it was acceptable. So if Qui-Gon was just like, ooh, the Force is really strong with this boy, and just took him back and just wasn't like, I gotta take a sample and Obi-Wan's got to check in his computer how high his metachlorian count is. You're like, is this necessary? It's not necessary. It just
I,
accept it.
the only explanation I can think of is like a justification just to like add a little oomph to like just how strong the Force is in Anakin, because like you really have to justify everything that they do on Tatooine because it is nuts. Like
It is nuts.
they let this little boy join like a death race essentially, where 99% of the participants don't survive.
Yeah.
Like they take him like they take him away from his mother. They bring him to an active war zone. Like just it, you just had to prove that it was all worth it because of those midichlorians.
Yeah. They have like, we have scientific proof why we were doing this.
Yeah,
Here it is. We have a document, with like a chart on there.
yes, and let us never speak of it again.
Again, exactly. Uh, but it's like, I think one of like especially in this series, I think one of my biggest problems is I don't have a problem with people adding new characters or making the world so that old characters meet each other, right? But not every story needs to have all the characters. Like, I don't understand why Anakin built C-3PO. Or like it's things like this that I'm just like, but why does he have to do it? Like, because I know they want R2D2 and C-3PO to get together, but he's a protocol droid. So wouldn't it make more sense that he would have been a droid for like Queen Amidala or something? Or like, for example, in the second movie, when she's not the queen anymore, she's a senator, she was given this droid, and then they meet each other or something. Like just somewhere else in the story that makes more sense than where he was, I think.
Yeah, I forgive the Phantom Menace ones a little bit, maybe just because I accepted it, but the one movie, and Paula will know which one I'm going to mention, that really bugged me for that was Rogue One. Because there were so many that showed up just as like, hey, remember that this person exists in the universe? We're going to show them now. And it doesn't contribute to the story at all. And in fact, it actually brings the entire story to a halt just to show somebody. I think the value of having a lot of characters at your disposal, and this is the same for the MCU, is you can think about your story first. And you can think about like, what type of character do I need to support the story that I'm going to tell? And there's a character out there somewhere that you can bring in. Like, you don't need to force it, but so oftentimes, like especially more recently, they're throwing in those characters just to say, hey, this character's around, we're going to mention them. We got to like get that cameo in. And like, I don't like the cameos, but I do feel like it's good to have a gigantic world full of characters that you know that you can connect to. Just as long as it's not forced. Like it should support the story.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not going to let that one go. Sorry, Tracy. Carson, I'm never going to not respond to a dig at Rogue One.
Okay. Yeah.
Because this, like, I feel like that's actually an example of like those are actually examples of good cameos. Because like, sorry, not all of them. The two I'm thinking of specifically, or maybe the one, is like Gold Leader when they're like doing the battle scare for the
I'm okay with Gold Leader.
Yes, that one. I think, but you're probably speaking specifically about the Cantina guys, right?
Talking about Buttface as well as the droids showing up later.
Okay, the droids, like, well, the droids I agree with because that like supports my point for what I'm going to get to about the prequels. Like, yes, I agree 100%. Like, you could have, it's a huge galaxy. You don't have to have C-3PO and R2-D2. Like, even in the sequels, like, you created a cool new droid called BB-8. Why bring back R2-D2? Like, it makes a little bit more sense because you have to find Luke. There's a connection there. But, like, this is one of the things that actually really does bother me. Well, not really bothers me a little bit about the prequels not making sense in the context of the rest of the movies is that, like, okay, C-3PO and R2-D2 went through all this. They know exactly who Anakin is. They should know who Luke is, and they spend all this time with him in the original trilogy. Like, and they don't think to say, like, hey, this is your dad, by the way. Like, we've been chasing you this whole time. Or just, like, stuff like that. Like, you could have, like, do away with them, make something new for the prequels. That's my, like, one big gripe about it, about C-3PO and R2-D2 specifically.
Well,
C-3PO had his mind wiped.
Correct. I was just going to mention that, which is something I did forget about, which was I wanted to bitch about. I'm like, oh, there's the line. Okay. But R2-D2 did not have his mind wiped and did not tell anybody anything at the same time. So
yeah, R2-D2 is a dick.
Yeah, but even one of the like in the original series, when Obi-Wan meets C-3PO and R2-D2, he's like, I've never seen these robots before. And you're like, are you sure? Are we sure about this? Okay. You didn't spend like 15 years going across the galaxy in a galactic war with these bots. Got
To
it.
be fair, and I appreciated these episodes in the Clone Wars. I don't know how much you guys have done in the Clone Wars, but like Anakin loses R2-D2 and R2-D2 is like lost somewhere. And Anakin's like, I gotta go save him. He's my droid. And Obi-Wan's like, who gives a shit? He's a droid. Like, and he just like leaves. So it's like, it's kind of on character for him to be like, I don't care about these droids. Like droids don't mean anything to me.
Hmm.
Whereas like Anakin was the only one who was kind of attached to them previously.
But in the prequels, and especially in Attack of the Clones, there's there was like two sequences or something where R2 was with Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's like, "Look out," R2 and whatever, and I was like, "Wait, I thought you didn't care about this. Like, what is happening here?"
I don't think
But
he
But he's
is like
like no, he's like telling him to like control the elevator or something.
in the beginning of
Oh no, that's
episode three.
is
yeah,
it the
that's
beginning of
right.
episode 3? Is that what I'm thinking
Sorry,
of?
I
I don't know.
Because in episode two, R2 and C-3PO are with Anakin and Padme the whole time.
That's
Like
right. They're
Obi-Wan
there
goes
the whole
off
yeah.
with his
time.
own droid and then gets captured. And then I think it's just the beginning of episode three where R2 is with Obi-Wan and he's just like, yeah, just, bring the elevator up. Like you're just a droid.
Hmm.
And then the rest of the time he's back with Anakin again. So
Yeah.
I don't think he
But
actually spends too much time.
They
but I
interact.
they interact. Like, and I feel like the character of Obi-Wan would remember Anakin yelling and screaming about the safety of R2-D2 for 10 years or whatever. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But it just seems like, and this is why I think some of the writing in these movies were not meant they they completely veered away from the original content to tell a completely separate story to a storyline that they weren't attaching to. And I think this is one of the reasons why in a lot of these storylines people try their except for the Clone Wars cartoon, people are like, no, this is canon. But like the prequels themselves, people are just like, I don't know. But even though in the Clone Wars cartoon, R2 and C-3PO were there as well. So it's a whole thing. It's a thing.
I think when it like if we're gonna start getting into the writing, that's a whole like other can of worms. But I mean, I think one of the things that really confused me. I mean, it went right over my head when I first watched like Phantom Menace, for example. But just going so deep into like space politics
Oh.
was like nowadays makes me think like when I'm rewatching like who really was this made for, or like did he just not realize that every 9 and 10 year old kid watching this is going to like shut their brains off for like a full hour of these movies when they're talking about the Senate and like trade embargoes and the Trade Federation. And it's like, oh, pod race, like time to pay attention again.
Yeah.
And then zone back out, signing treaties, whatever. Okay, space battle, I'm back in. Like, it just like the amount of like detail that he went into. I get it's a whole scheme of Emperor Palpatine to like take control, but I feel like there could have been a little more fun way to tell that story. I mean, to be fair, I don't know what that fun way is, but I feel like somewhat like a writer could have done it.
I I think it has to do with the fact that like I actually don't think these prequels were made for 10-year-olds. I think the color palette and the fact that there's a child in the first movie is to attract the little kids. It's for like the parents to bring their kid with them. But these movies were made for the people who were already Star Wars fans. And so they're usually a bit older, or it's like they even like it's kids who like well, they would have been adults who saw the original series, got obsessed, had kids, showed them those, and then now they're grandparents and they're taking their grandkids to see this. Like I feel like
True.
that's kind of what they were going for. So like all the politics stuff is for the adults who will understand. But the reason why it's all flashy and oversaturated with color is to try and keep little kids' attention.
I
Yeah,
never
I
minded the politics stuff too much.
Hmm.
I was also a 10-year-old that watched like CNN and This Hour Is 22 Minutes a lot. So it's like, it didn't entertain me, that's for sure, but it didn't like bother me that there was politics in there. Um, And I think going back to what I said about, I like the idea that it felt like George was in control and making a big story. Like, it wasn't as if, like, these days, if you're trying to build a franchise, you build a compelling first story and then you get enough budget for a sequel and you're like, okay, where do we go now? And you don't really have a big story in mind. And, if you get enough success, you try to build a story. But I felt like he went in, he had the whole story in mind. And that story was really about Palpatine and Anakin. And in order to tell that story, there was a political lens. And so episode one was setting up a lot of politics that was required for the story. It didn't make it interesting. It was not fun, but it was necessary to tell the story that he wanted to tell. So that's why I'm a bit forgiving on things that are boring, because I'm like, I see the point of it being there. I see it why it contributes to the story you want to tell, even if it's not really that interesting. And by the way, I don't want to be the one who's defending these movies too much. Like, they are boring, but just because the movies overall are bad, I think it's unfair to say that every part about them is bad. I think they're bad because the character dialogue is really bad, and the characters themselves are really boring at times.
That's a really big part of the story.
It is, and that's fundamentally why they're bad, is because, like, people don't sound like people, which is a pretty major thing. But there's things to enjoy and there's things that are bad, and I'm happy with differentiating it and just enjoying what I can.
Well, okay. So watching these, I realized I haven't watched them in a long time, and I haven't really thought about them much. And for some reason, like with the original series, I thought George Lucas directed the first one, and two other people directed the second two. But George Lucas directed all three of these movies. And even in my regular rewatching of the original series, the first one is the worst movie. And it's not just because it's an introduction of a story, it is because the people don't sound like people. The sort of the direction of scenes are flat and kind of bland. And like you have, oh, I'm sorry, Luke is a giant whiny bitch in that movie. Like, he's just really, really annoying. And watching this again, as I just watched the original series, I was like, I honestly feel like even though he is the person who created this world, the real issue, I think, is George Lucas. I think he's not a very good director, and if he he I feel like he directed people to act a way that they shouldn't have acted in these movies. And if they were allowed to, or they were given better direction, I feel like even with the cheesy dialogue, it would have come across a lot better.
I
I
don't
think
know,
so.
but I think you're giving a little too much credit, which is not even a lot,
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
dialogue, because the dialogue is really, really bad. Like, I
Oh,
mean,
I am not defending the dialogue. I am just saying sometimes if you give a good actor bad dialogue, like based on like their charm or how they decide to bring it, they can make it so it doesn't seem so bad. But
yeah, for
because
sure.
of the I feel like because of the direction in these movies, the bad dialogue is so emphasized that you're just like, "Oh, what are you saying?" Like, "Oh my God." It's just it just comes across wrong. Everything comes across wrong. Is
Sometimes I like that, because as
okay.
somebody who has watched way too many movies, and especially way too many like blockbuster movies, sometimes the worst thing for me is when it's like way too many people have been involved and it's a super refined, super edited movie. Sometimes I like to see a big mess like what George Lucas makes, or Zack Snyder is another one for me, where it's
Oh
like,
God, yeah,
clearly this person
can't.
did not get enough feedback, and I love it. Like, let me see your raw, unedited vision for what your story is and everything that's wrong with it, because that's something new. It's something original. And yes, you can point it and be like, you should have done these seven things differently, but if they would have had someone change those seven things, they also would have changed some of the other fundamental ideas of the story. So it's like, just give it to me raw and unedited and just like unfiltered dump of your brain. And that's what I feel like the prequels were. Like, nobody gave him any feedback. It was just purely whatever he wanted to do.
But I think a movie in general, even the director, writer, whatever, a movie is always a collaborative event, right? Whether it's like suits in a boardroom, just looking at numbers on a page, or it's a bunch of like artists in a room going like, "Oh, you know, it'd be so cool, it'd be this." Whether it is, it's a collaborative thing. But I think though, if you have the wrong person at the helm, and they're not necessarily saying no, but they might just be saying yes to things they shouldn't be saying yes to, or maybe it's just like an idea of like taste. It's just he's not a great storyteller. He's really good at coming up with the ideas for the story. Like with Zack Snyder, he makes things real pretty, but he's a bad storyteller. Um, like it just they just don't work. And no, do I have ideas of like actual fixes? No. But then I look at some of like the animated shows or some of even like the Disney shows that have come out, and you're just like, oh, so they do know how to tell Star Wars stories. That doesn't include specific people, but they're just not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like George Lucas, George Lucas definitely, I think, should shoulder a lot of, I don't want to say the blame, but
Yeah.
like I agree. I don't think he's a great director. Like I still really believe that like no one could have made that dialogue any better. But just to like kind of support that, I don't know if either of you have seen Red Tails. Um,
No.
so
No, that
it
doesn't
was
sound
like
familiar.
okay, so it's George Lucas, like probably one of his most recent movies, but it was like 2010s. It's about the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II. Um, like the all black pilots. Um,
Oh yeah, I know who they
and
are. Yeah.
yeah, but basically telling their story, but it's like their story, but like it's like uh, it, I don't know how to describe it. They're like it's like a cartoon, but like with real people,
Okay.
because the dialogue in that is just as bad as Star Wars. Like I remember the first, I was super excited to see this movie when it first came out because like it's a World War II movie. George Lucas like got the Star Wars pedigree, sure, like I'm into it.
Is
And
sorry, is this the one with Cuba
yeah,
Gooding Jr.?
yes,
Yep.
he is in it.
Okay.
He is like their commanding officer or something. Um, and I remember leading up to it. Sorry, I have to add this as well. Like there was a whole press tour where George Lucas was like, no one wanted to tell this story. Like I brought this movie to like all these studios and no one would touch it. And he was like, it must be because like no one cares about like these people and what they did. And it's like a race thing. And I was like, okay, I mean, I still want to watch it. I'm sure that happens. I don't know if that's the case for this one. 10 minutes into the movie, I was like, this is bad.
Oh
um,
no. Oh no.
like the very first scene and encounter, it's like the whole thing about the Tuskegee Airmen, at least in this movie, in Red Tails, is like the bomber escorts would keep leaving the bombers so that they could shoot down other planes, and the bombers kept getting shot down. So they brought in the Tuskegee Airmen because they would stay on mission. So to demonstrate that, like the bombers are watching the fighters go away, and they're like, "Oh, these 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 pilots are always leaving us high and dry." This is probably like exact dialogue, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
they're always like chasing glory and leaving us alone. And then like right after the Tuskegee Airmen are like staying with them, and they're like, "Oh wow, they're giving up glory to save our asses." Blah blah blah, and just like it's the whole way through is dialogue like that, and it just reminded me of like Anakin and Padme falling in love, like the whole like throughout episode two. It's like I think just as a writer, he has like M. Night Shyamalan syndrome. Like George Lucas doesn't know how regular
Yeah.
people talk and can't
Well,
write it down.
okay, so just to clarify, so George Lucas, his company produced it, and he was yeah, one of the executive or just producers, I don't know, of the movie. And I'm pretty sure he oh, so he directed reshoots of certain parts.
Oh yeah, he
And
wasn't the main
main
director, if I
director,
remember
yeah.
correctly.
Yeah, and so as executive producer, he directed reshoots of the movie, but he put all the money into making this movie, and I'm
Hmm.
surprised it's still so bad when there's so many other people involved
I
in
think he
it.
was more heavily involved. Like that was the impression I got that it's like he wasn't the typical I'm going to put money in producer and then you go make me a
He
movie.
was
It's like,
very hands-on.
yeah.
Hands on. Yeah, but it's sad when that happens. Like, you're like, no, you're telling like a really good historical story that in
Yeah,
itself has a good story, and then it falls apart. Oh, that's horrible.
But
I
that's like
would
the
I would
worst of
recommend.
that's the worst of George Lucas with none of the good stuff. It's like him
Yeah,
executing on an idea, but not his idea because it's like a real thing that happened. Like you want to have George Lucas come up with the idea and all the framework, and then you want someone else to write the dialogue.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, because he's very good at coming up with like ideas for worlds, like and ideas of, you know, like a character development, but how the nitty-gritty of how they get there within a story, that's not him. That's when you hand it over to somebody else and they handle it, I think. But like with Phantom Menace, like there's just so much in all of these movies that just you're like, I'm looking at it as I want to like it. It's in a world that I already like. Why can't I can't get into it, right? And then it was just like so he used some kind of new technology when he was filming these movies and stuff, and it has aged even within the year the movie came out, the way it looked aged it immediately. Like it just looked bad. And then Jar Jar shows up on screen, and you're just like, oh no, I don't want any of this. Why
I
is this hurting me so
I'm
much?
going to ignore Jar Jar for a second, but I have to
Okay.
disagree with your point on like I watch these every couple of years. I feel like they hold up. Like
I was gonna say the
Really?
same thing.
the
Yeah.
visuals, this most recent time I rewatched them, I was like, there was a couple things where I was like, it's starting to look a little old. But one thing that I think was super, super impressive is the sound mixing. Everything
Oh,
felt so
yes.
real, like especially the pod racers and everything. Like, I don't think that was something you had done as well before these movies were built. And like the score and the sound, I remember growing up, like we would whenever we added something to our surround sound in our living room, whether it was a new speaker or new like whatever, we would always pop open the pod race scene and test out our new setup on that because that was like the scene. Um, and the visuals, I would say, hold up pretty well. Like now that you have the MCU, like okay, they're not that well, but like I feel like they hold up pretty well.
I mean,
The most egregious movie though is the third one, Revenge of the Sith. And my biggest problem with it is that you can tell I know this is in a lot of movies that huge scenes are shot on green screen, and we can complain about it in the MCU as well. They have done it egregiously in some movies. Um, but it's like you're looking at it and you're like, even like the people in the scene are not interacting with the environment in any way. Because there's scenes like so for well no this is in the second movie but in the second movie they go to that planet that has like that's building like the robots or whatever, and there's a conveyor belt thing and they're going through it, but if you pay attention nobody's casting a single shadow on anything because there's looking at it as like, why does this look so weird? And I was like, oh, it's because they're not casting shadows, and it just automatically, even if you don't notice it, your brain is like, this is wrong. And even with everything around them that is animated, nothing seems like it's in the same place. And I just don't understand how that works. Because
I
it just doesn't work to me when I look at it.
no, I mean, like, I definitely get, like, I don't blame you for that. I feel like it gets a super pass for me, like all three of the movies,
Hmm.
in terms of effects. Like, I agree with Carson. Like I think they hold up pretty well, especially like comparing it to something like I think I just watched the new Captain America recently.
Mhm.
And the whole like last act where he's fighting Red Hulk looks horrendous, and it's 2025. Like everything in the prequel looks better than that last scene. Like when
You had me on the last scene looks horrendous. Yes. Looks better than the prequels.
no, I
Sorry,
stand
the
by it.
prequels look better? No, 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 no,
Yes.
no. That's too far for me. That's too far.
Okay, we're gonna have to disagree on that
That's
one, but
fine.
like, like the only thing that I really remember, like, kind of taking me out of the prequels in Phantom Menace is when Darth Maul he finally meets Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon on Naboo, and he like the doors open, and then it's like a close up on his face, and you can see his horns where like they're like glued onto his head. It's like
Okay.
very obviously prosthetics.
Yeah.
That's like the only thing that like maybe took me out of it. But like I don't know. I think I feel like some of the effects nowadays, like I feel like it's regressed a little bit.
I agree with you.
Um,
Hmm.
But
yeah,
I do
and
agree
like
with you, Tracy, on just the pure volume of visual effects and like people interacting. Like, for example, none of the clones were real. They were all
Hmm.
CG.
yeah,
And it's like you can tell that a real actor interacting with a CGI thing, that it's not, there's something a little off. But the actual visual itself is really well done.
Yeah, I think
everything looks nice.
Yeah.
there's quite a few scenes where they do like full like they do like full shots of like a city, or they show a full shot of like the army amassing. As long as there's nothing real in it, it looks fine, right? But as soon as you're just like, here's a person standing to a CG clone warrior, and you're just like, why? Why? You're telling me you can't just put like a guy in a suit to stand beside this other guy?
I'm
No.
okay with it. I'm
Okay.
okay because especially you see like some
Super
of the
fast.
Star Wars TV shows these days and like it all takes place in a little village in like the countryside.
I'm
And you're
okay
like,
with it.
okay, that's real, but it's also who cares? It's a village in the countryside. Like he's trying to tell this grand story of what the Republic looked like in its glory, and it has to be grand and amazing. And compare that to something like Megalopolis. And I know that's an unfair comparison, but like Megalopolis trying to tell that story is just a complete disaster. At least like this one was pretty well built out.
I mean, I did not watch Megalopolis because the first time I heard it was happening, I was like, no, I was like, this is going to be bad. There is no way. But I don't bitch about it because I haven't seen it. I just leave it. And one day, when it's showing at 3 o'clock in the morning on some channel somewhere, I will probably sit and have a look, and I'll be like, "Oh, this is why I didn't look at it before. Got it." And then I will complain about it.
When that day comes, come back to us and let
Come
us
back
know what you
to.
think. I'm very curious.
I'll be like, "I finally did it. I need to yell it and yell to the sky about it. Let's talk." Yes, it'll happen. Um, but yeah, like I don't know. Looking at it, maybe it's because I haven't fully watched these movies in a while. Because they do show on, as people know, I'm an old lady and I watch TV still. They do show on TV pretty regularly with the original series, and I will watch the original series back to back every time it's on. I will do, I will click back and forth every like half an hour for a scene in one of these prequels and then completely forget about it and not look at it anymore because I'm just like, I can't. This is hurting my brain. That's just how it works. I don't know. So maybe that lack of watching it, because I find if you watch something consistently, your brain always knows what it looks like. But if you like watch it once and then don't watch it for like 10 years, and then you look at it, you're like, oh, this looks weird. And I think maybe that might be what my brain is doing.
That might be it because again, like as I mentioned, like I rewatch these every couple of years, and so it would be very different if I had watched them disappeared for 15 years and then watched them again just based on my memory. But it's like I'm constantly refreshing, and I think like I don't know the psychology behind it, but there's probably a part of my brain that's filling in the gaps for the movie that they're not doing. because I want to build out this world because I want to have it all. That like maybe that's why I'm a little bit more forgiving for some of the world building and some of like the visual effects because like again, I want to be in those worlds. I want to be part of it. So it's like my brain will fill in the gaps.
You're just like, I don't care. I just need to hear the story because I want to be there, right? I mean, that's like me with really bad episodes of Star Trek. I do it all the time. I'm like, this is shit, but I'm looking at it because I'm in the world. It's fine.
It's a little bit different with Star Trek, like a TV show, because there's I recently watched TNG for the first time. Um, I
Okay.
didn't watch a lot of Star Trek, but 24 episodes a season for 7 seasons, like that's a lot. And so if you have a bad episode, who cares? Your brain forgets about it. Like you take what you want about the character development and it's gone.
Mhm.
Whereas like Star Wars, especially at that time, like it was just those three movies. There was no extra TV
Correct.
shows. There was no, like, now there's a bunch of extra content. And so it's watering it down. But at that point, like, I think people like scrutinized every single scene, every line of dialogue, because that was Star Wars. That was the
Mhm.
only Star Wars. And so, when you only have one movie, you expect every bit of it to be meaningful.
It's true, yeah, because that's the thing. I think people who are n now into fandoms forget there was a time where like being a giant nerd was not a good thing back in the day. And they did not make a lot of content for giant nerds, right? And so it's like yeah, we are really into Star Wars, but there's only three Star Wars movies for what was it? Uh 25 years or something like that. And you're like, that's all you had. And then Phantom Menace comes out, and you're wondering why people are having a meltdown about it. It's because they've just waited so long for something, and you're like, it's finally here. Whether they liked it or not, people were just like losing their minds about it. And then I don't think it was until was it after Attack of the Clones where you got they released so so the first Star Wars Clone Wars was done by Genndy Tartakovsky, I think that's how you say his last name. And they were done as interstitials for the Cartoon Network. They were 5 minutes long, and then by the end they were like 15 to 20 minute long episodes. But it's broken up into two seasons. But overall, it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of content besides the movies.
Mhm.
Um, and then they brought in like Clone Wars, the show that most people know that was what, 6 seasons, 7 seasons?
7 seasons, yeah.
7 seasons that really built out the story, like what happened to the clones, where did they come from, the battles they did with, the Jedi and all this kind of stuff. And so it made it so much deeper when the betrayal happened in Revenge of the Sith. You're just like, how could you do this? You guys were legitimately like friends. They trusted you with their lives, all this kind of stuff. And then you're just like, Order 66, shoot him in the back. And they just said, okay. And like like when that happened, it was like as a giant dork, it was like this is amazing. We have stuff. And now it's just built bigger and bigger and bigger. So you have more people being either more nitpicky, or you have so much content that people are only choosing to know parts of it, all this kind of stuff. But it's true. It's just such a massive space to be in that you can like the bad stuff, you can like the good stuff, you can like all of it, you can like none of it. It's fine.
But it's interesting that people get so hung up on Star Wars being bad at that time because that was like the heyday. If you were a nerd, if you were into some franchises like 99 to 2005, the prequels came out for Star Wars, but that's also when you got the X-Men movies. That's when you got Spider-Man, Lord of the Rings, which probably ruined. I think honestly, people would have been okay with episode 2 and 3 of Star Wars if Lord of the Rings hadn't come out, because Lord of the Rings came out and it was like, this is how good it can be. Like it can be serious, it can be well made, it can be everything, and like it that in comparison made Star Wars 2 and 3 that much worse when you had somebody doing something similar for that type of like fandom so well.
Well, even, The Matrix came out in 1999, and you
Yep.
had serious, big world sci-fi that looked good, was acted good, had really good dialogue, and you're just like, oh no, we can have this. We just don't in this space, and it's painful. It's painful. I don't know. I have a few notes for Phantom Menace, not too many, because I just kind of got, let's say, distracted, by not wanting to watch it. I'm a horrible person. But is there like for Phantom Menace specifically, is there like anything like you want to bring up? Like you're just like, no, we need to talk about this thing in Phantom Menace.
Duel of the Fates. There's not much to talk
Okay.
about. It's just amazing. That
Okay.
whole lightsaber fight at this end, like I rehearsed that as a kid. Me and my brother could reenact the Maul versus Obi-Wan fight after they go like single blade to single blade.
Hmm.
So that's all I'll say.
Okay.
I would take that even further, like all the music throughout the movie.
Yes.
Actually, I think all the entire franchise, like, um, I love the music just so much. Even I think most recently I watched Phantom Menace before this, and the end when they're like all celebrating,
Hmm.
and it's like they're giving that glowing ball.
Which
Um,
is confusing to me, but yes.
yeah, it's a gift, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but um, yeah, like that is just so like joyful and happy. Like I like really good movie soundtracks. I get super into. So like, and like my iPod is filled with it. So like Star Wars, like prequels and all that stuff, like all the music throughout, I'm
Mhm.
heavy into that. Duel of
I
the Fates is just the
absolutely
most
agree
well
with
known.
you. Yeah. My thing with these movies is that despite I've complained about the CG and the oversaturation of color in the movies, the designs of the ships and some of the robots and stuff that they have in the background and stuff is fantastic. Like they're just they do a lot more sleek and like rounded edges kind of thing on a lot of the ships. Well, especially like Amidala's ship, which is just like chrome, which I think is pretty flashy, but
It's like
Um,
all of the Naboo ships.
yeah, like they're very what can I say? They're I know this is usually a word used for food, but they're decadent. Like you know what I mean? Um because they're just so the designs are juicy. I'm just saying it. I'm just gonna say it. They're just very cool. Um but like but I find they spend a lot of time if this was a video game, I'd be like, this is cool. But since it's in a movie, every time they show one of the ships, they do like a camera pan around in a circle. And I'm like, we're not picking ships in a menu. Just we see the ship land. Let's go. We can do this. It's fine.
Tracy, you've clearly never played Star Wars Rogue Squadron on Nintendo 64
Well, that's what I
because
say. If it's in a game, I'm fine with it.
oh yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Like I don't again going back to that game, sorry, tangent, but there was a cheat code where you could unlock the Naboo Starfighter, and it's like the best ship in the game.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like the fastest, the strongest, which I mean, I don't probably not I don't know, lore accurate, whatever. But I put so many hours into that. I forgot to like take out the chicken so many times for my mom coming home because take the chicken out of the fridge because of that game.
Yeah.
So um but like the influence and even actually from the Mandalorian, like bringing the Naboo starfighter back
Back.
when he like switched ships, which by the way, I felt like was not functional for his uses, but it was super cool to see it again.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Um, so uh, well, this movie, Phantom Menace, has if you can spot her, um, she is one of Princess Amidala's clones. Sorry, Queen Amidala's clones. It's and I'm gonna
Handmaidens.
sorry.
Handmaidens. There's
One of the
a good
handmaidens.
cast of handmaidens in this.
Correct. It is Keira Knightley is one of them.
Yes,
You have
Yes.
that
Keira
blew my
Knightley,
mind.
and you have what's her name? She's a more comedian.
Rose
Rose
Byrne
Byrne,
Rose Byrne,
yeah.
yeah.
But she
in
shows up in
episode
Attack of the
2.
Clones.
Yeah,
Yeah. You see her. For some reason I had thought she was the one that died right at the beginning. And I was like, that doesn't really look like her. And then she shows up on screen, full face, and I'm like, boom, there she is. Okay, it's fine.
that confused me too when I first watched it. But I
Yeah.
remember watching it in theaters, and I was a little bit late. But I was like,
Mhm.
wait, I thought that one died because their names were so close together. And then, like, only years later, I realized it was like Rose Byrne and Keira Knightley also from the first one. That was like mind blasting to me. I thought they were like twins.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. With the makeup on, they look exactly the same, which I think is one of the reasons why the handmaidens have their face sort of hidden most of the movie, so you can't like pick out who is who. Um, but everybody was like shook when Amidala came out, was like, "No, I'm the real queen." You're like, "What? Oh my
Yeah.
God, it's happening." It's
Um, Speaking of recognizable actors, and this is not really a recognizable
it's
actor,
okay.
but I don't know if either of you know this or have watched Whose Line Is It Anyway? Um, but Greg Proops, so he's the guy with curly hair and glasses. He wasn't on every episode of Whose Line.
Yeah.
He was like one of the like the fourth person would always like rotate out. He was the one that always wore a suit. He had glasses.
Him. Yes.
Yes. He is one of the heads of the announcing alien at the pod race.
No.
Yeah. Um, if
Okay.
you're familiar with him, when you listen to him talk after you find out that it's him, you can only hear his voice.
Okay. Yeah, this is one of those things where in like 5 years, I'm gonna watch this again. And I'll be like, wait, wasn't there trivia? What? Why does this guy sound familiar all of a sudden? And I'll know exactly who it is.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you. I did not know that bit of trivia. So yeah, that's a good one.
I always got to come with one when I come on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. I love a good random tidbit of information. Like a friend of mine knew I was doing this recording, and she's like, "You have to mention this," which I almost forgot. Thank you. Was that in the pod race scene on there where they did built their practical set part, and they were doing like the far out shots. All of the audience is like painted Q-tips.
Mhm.
That's all it is. Yes.
That tracks.
Yes.
I remember it would have been out around this time. Discovery Channel had a show called Movie Magic, where they would show how certain scenes were made, how certain practical effects, and they did a whole one that was just on the pod race because they built the crowd, and then as you mentioned, it's Q-tips, and there's somebody underneath just like putting their fingers
Yeah.
up to make it look like motion.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Like it's such a simple solution to a problem if you're not doing close-ups and you're just like that just does make sense. Oh my God, it's crazy. Yeah, and it looks and that's one of the scenes I always look really close at it. I'm like, can I tell it's Q-tips? I can't tell it's Q-tips. It's fine. It's okay. Um, so anyways, Attack of the Clones. I have a surprising amount of notes of Attack of the Clones. Because I think this is the movie I've watched the least in this trilogy. I've definitely watched Phantom Menace more than the other two. But I tend to watch Phantom Menace and then I'll skip the middle and then I'll watch like the battle sequence in Revenge of the Sith at the end where he loses his legs and stuff. I have the high ground, that part. Um, but this one, I was like, as I watched this movie, I was like, I remember nothing about this film. I remember nothing about it. I know they end up going off together, and Anakin says something about sand. Um, but that was like 95% of my memory of the movie. And so, A, I was I had to pay more attention to this movie just to get the full story again, I guess I should say. But I was just like, it was like pulling teeth to keep me focused on it. Like it was driving me crazy. But yes. My first note on this is why is her ship a World War II bomber? That was my first comment.
Oh yeah, or it's like a stealth bomber from like
Yeah.
the Cold War.
Yeah. Well, because
It's
the
shiny.
thing that made me say it was World War II is because it had like it didn't actually have propellers, but it had like the things that the propellers would attach to without actual propellers. It was just like a blue
Yes.
light or something on it. And I was like, no, it's got propellers. It's got to be World War II. They can't be like the modern stealth bomber. I was like, okay, it's fine. Um, but yeah, I was like, sure, you're going somewhere else with the design in this one. I'm okay with it. It's fine.
Well, it's not the Queen's ship anymore. It's just she's just a senator, so she doesn't get the full like jet stream sleek design as the which it got blown up anyway. So
That is, it did
it
get blown
doesn't
up
matter.
anyways. Yeah. Like we'll never see that one again. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, but like it's not that it was like a bad design. It just in the world and the ships that we've seen so far, it seemed out of place. But like visually, like it's cool looking. So I was like, okay with that part of it. I
The
am
the
being nitpicky now, I think.
the theme of Attack of the Clones for me is a lot of fun things that I was really interested in, and a lot of things that you just need to ignore because there's some really like the dialogue in episode 2 is probably as bad as it gets all trilogy, especially because when they try to focus on the love story of Anakin and Padme, like that's just downright terrible. But there's certain things that are really well done. Like you see the clone army for the first time. Camino, I love Camino, the whole planet that's going on there. The battle scenes that they have in Geonosis. I'll also say I was 12 or 13 years old, and so love the visuals. Let me just put it that way.
I'm glad you said that, so I didn't have to. Um, because you know what? I'm just not going to say
Okay.
anything.
We're sitting here with bated breath waiting for you to like see the thing, but no, you're not gonna do it.
It's Padme.
It's
Yeah,
Padme. It's Padme.
Yeah.
Um
My favorite, sorry, before I said I wasn't going to say anything, I lied. My favorite, I saw like a post on, I mean, wasn't even a long time ago. It was like recently a post on Reddit about, it's just a picture of Padme wearing that like black dress when they were like talking by the fire. And
no.
the caption is like just Padme wearing her hottest outfit to tell Anakin they can't be together.
The worst part is that like first of all, Anakin's real aggressive. He's real aggressive,
He's a
okay?
creep.
He comes across that's the thing. He comes across so creepy in it because you're just like no, like everything he says it just gave me like goosebumps, like runaway goosebumps. Like, no, something's wrong. I have to leave. And but for some reason, Padme's just like, oh, this is hot. And then they're sitting on the couch, and he's all just like spouting quote unquote poetry at her, like the clumsiest, worst written poetry or whatever that from his heart. And literally, my comment is, he's such a fuck boy. That's what I came up with. I'm like, that's all. He's like, he's saying everything to her in a way to get her in bed. That's all it's coming across as. And to everybody watching it, you're just like, run away, run for your life. But for her, she's just like, it's okay. It's just Annie. It's fine. Like, no,
and
like,
and this
Which is
is one
even worse. Yeah.
like George needed that storyline to happen. He didn't care. He didn't want to tell that story. You really needed to sell that before the warning signs start coming because it's a little bit different if the warning signs are happening to someone that you're already in love with and you've sold the love. But if you're doing that at the same time that you're trying to show that they're falling in love is really clunky. But I don't think he cared. He's like, I got a story to tell. That story requires them to be in love. So boom, I'm telling you they're in love. You're gonna have to believe me. I'm moving on to the next part. So that really needed to be two different movies. Like they really should not have set the Phantom Menace when Anakin was a kid. They really should have had that whole love story, had them both be adults, sell that, and then get into the warning signs in episode 2.
Well,
yeah.
on top of that, I think when they first come, like when they first meet each other again in episode 2, someone says something about like, oh, it's been 2 years,
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
10. Oh, did I just
10.
mishear that?
Yeah.
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 Oh, thank
Because
God.
my note is it's been 10 years, question mark, exclamation mark, because I had always thought my memory of this movie was like it happened like 2 years later, like you're thinking. And I'm like, does he look? I know he's around puberty age and you're gonna change real quick, but I was like, this isn't working. But they're like, no, it's 10 years. And I was like, but she looks, as he says in the movie, she looks exactly the same. And he looks like a completely different person. So
She does look great. Sorry, that's the last one. I'm not gonna bring it up anymore.
you know what? I am not going to deny because even watching this one, first of all, outfits, her costume designer did her justice. Like she looks amazing. Like she's wearing so when they go back to Naboo and they're like getting off the boat and she's wearing this like colorful backless thing that's hanging from like a chain on her neck. And I was like, "Damn. I thought you were trying to keep it low key, but you're just putting it out there."
Yeah,
Okay.
and
It's fine.
let's send the one horny teenager Jedi uh, who has who has said himself he's dreamt about her every single day since they've been apart. Let's
Yeah.
have him protect her. Nothing will go wrong. It's fine.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, every costume we saw her in before that, she was covered head to toe. But suddenly, she's just like shoulders out, back out. Let's have it. It's
Even
good.
when she does cover back up, like on Geonosis, that little beast thing has to like rip half her shirt.
Shirt off. Yeah. And she's like, "Ow, ooh, crop top. I look great."
One other comment I wanted to make, because you brought up the outfit of like the black outfit when she says we can't be together. Somebody was proposing online that because there's like a thing that goes around her neck that it's supposed to be foreshadowing of Vader choking her later on, which ended up coincidentally looking like a BDSM outfit. But I don't know. Like I can totally see like George Lucas being there being like, oh, this is just subtle foreshadowing and being completely clueless to how that scene looks like in the context of the movie. So I completely, and that's another thing I was going to say about Phantom Menace as well. Like I love rewatching these movies, looking at all the conspiracy theories, like Darth Jar Jar, rewatching Phantom Menace with that in mind and trying to like catch it and be like, was it like, did that fish have orange eyes in that 1 second? Like little things like that. Like I've always enjoyed watching on return viewings.
But also, technically, watching Revenge of the Sith, all of this ends up coming to fruition because of Jar Jar. So, but we can talk about it when we get there.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's
I
fine.
mean, I was thinking about that too when we were watching. Sorry, when I was watching Phantom Menace again, and it's like, okay, no, he's clearly just inept. Like I see no guile, no cunning in his
I
movements.
I genuinely believe that that was the intent of the character, having rewatched it a bunch of times.
To
I
be Darth
believe
Jar Jar.
I believe that who was cast as Count Dooku was meant to be revealed as Darth Jar Jar, and that whole plot line to be him.
I mean, to be
I'm
fair, like
I'm down with it.
when they first mentioned Count Dooku in the second movie, it's like, oh, he's not even in the title crawl. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like I think Count Dooku did this. Oh, wait, what? Who?
Yeah. So yeah, no, I really am down with it because I'm like nobody could be that inept. Like it's kind of impossible. He got his arm stuck in the engine of the pod racer because he tripped over like a wrench or
Yeah,
something,
I
and
mean, he
Padme
Guess
had
almost
to
is
save
died
him.
there.
Like
It's
I
just
think
the perfect disguise.
it's true,
He
but
just
that's
knew Padme was going to save him from the pod racer. Sweet,
yeah.
sweet Padme.
Yeah. But that's like the conspiracy the theory that like well, there's two theories about stormtroopers that they're bad shots because the helmets are badly made and they literally just can't see. And the other one is no, they fake being bad shots because it's part of the plan to capture them and stuff. So like they're just kind of like pushing them in places. That's why they're missing
Oh, like they're
the good
hurting.
guys. They're hurting
Yeah,
them essentially. So there's those two things. Who knows?
Jar Jar
Um,
was hurting everyone the entire time
right? I
through
think I
his
think
clumsiness.
yeah. You know, his job was to make sure Padme and Anakin spend some time together and then, you know, become a senator, and then get on the floor in place of her for Naboo and talk about how great um Palpatine is and then get him in charge. So yeah,
I
it's
guess.
yeah, the dots are there. The dots are
Otherwise, it's
there.
the worst case of like failing upward that I've
Ever.
ever seen. Like from banished to general, bombad general
Yeah.
to this is senator, ambassador to Naboo to senator to overthrowing the chancellor or whatever it was.
Right? I think so. I definitely think so.
Guess we'll never know.
Never really know. Well, until they run out of stories they think they're telling, and then they'll just make one. It's fine.
Or the inevitable prequel reboot.
Oh no.
You might
That's one
like
thing
both
I'm
ones.
curious because they've talked about it for a while now of are they going to remake the original trilogy?
No, they can't do that.
Because
No.
I mean at some point you're going to run out of money and if you make that trilogy you're going to make a lot of money even if it's bad. But because you talk about like some of the continuity stuff, like if you were to remake the trilogy, you would have to remake it in the context of it making sense with the prequels because it doesn't make sense. Like there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like why is Luke wearing a Jedi outfit and like why are the Jedi in the prequels wearing things that are just like a typical civilian outfit in like episode 4 and just like little things like that. It's like I almost want to see it just to like out of morbid curiosity. Um,
Oh,
I
because
I'll
mean,
yeah,
watch it when it comes out.
I kind of, yes, I do also have a more curiosity, but if you say it too many times, it'll happen and they will ruin everything. So please, we need to not say it out loud at least.
they're running out of stories. Like you got to go
How,
somewhere.
my thing is, how can they run out of story? Because even if, so for example, all of these movies have opening crawls of stories that are not actually, we have not seen on screen, right? So why can't you just take the crawl and make a story out of what the crawl is?
Well, that's kind of like what Rogue One is, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's one movie.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So
Like it can be done,
it
clearly.
can be done.
But then
There's
Carson's
definitely
gonna
more
hate
stories.
it.
Yeah. But I also think like, you know, you could have so this is specifically part of the Skywalker saga. The 9 movies are part of the Skywalker saga. And you could have, you know, the saga of Darth Sidious or something, or the saga of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, where did he come from? They could do a whole story about like his past and how he ended up there, and you know, with his some of his earlier battles with Qui-Gon Jinn, and like how he ended up his Padawan, like something in there. Or you can even be like, I know they have the child in Mandalorian, but where the fuck does Yoda come from? Who the fuck? Like, you can do a whole. He's got 900 years of history that you can
So,
work with. Do a
yeah,
Yoda thing.
that's
Like,
what frustrates me about the like all those series that have come out. Like
mhm,
aside from Andor and Mandalorian, which are great, like the
we're
other ones, I
great.
feel like you can do those things, but they just don't
Yeah.
ever. Like
Yes.
Well,
the Obi-Wan show had to be about him and Princess Leia, um, and not like all the cool things that he could have done like before, like way back when.
Yeah.
that's the struggle with doing short-term prequels because the character kind of has to end up where you already know that they're going, and so there's not a lot of story to tell. You either got to go way into the future to a bunch of characters you've never met, or you have to keep going after the story, which people don't care because it's like, oh, Luke and Vader are dead. Like, I don't care about Star Wars after that. And like, they're starting to do some interesting things over there with the Mandalorian show that like I'm more interested in than the more recent movies. But it's like, yeah, you gotta. There is a movie coming out from James Mangold who did the Logan movie, which is set like 1,000 years before the prequel trilogy, and it's like, okay, I'm on board with that.
Okay.
It's far enough along that you're not like connected to any of the movies.
Yeah, I am surprised I hadn't heard about this, but based on your description, I'm down for that. I will watch that like crazy.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, because it's like if it takes like a thousand years before all of this stuff kind of happens, they have to put in a bunch of new characters, um, which I'm looking forward to. Like I want to see. Like I know the sequels tried to show more of the world or whatever. They just did it in a bad way. But like I want to see what other people are doing in this timeline. I want to see what else is out there because not everybody was part of battles or not, we don't get stories for all of like for all of the Jedi. Like we like in these movies you see there's a Jedi Council, there's a Jedi school, there's hundreds of them, but we only see the storyline of two. Maybe while we catch up with one much later on. Um so like, you know, why not? Like even Mace Windu, like he's a high level person who's older on the Jedi Council. Where did he come from? Let's do some backstory on that guy. Like he has
And
a
he's not even dead. Like
he's
we
not,
could
yeah.
do in the future. Like he survived that, you
He
But
just
know?
fell out of a window. It's okay.
I'm a little upset with the Acolyte because like the Acolyte did that, and I actually liked the Acolyte, and everyone hated it. Everyone
Yeah.
said everything bad about it, and it was so nitpicky because like yeah, there were some things that were wrong with it, but it's like I feel like 100 years is also kind of a good timeline because you get to connect with, Darth Plagueis shows up, who is Sidious's master, and it's close enough that you kind of know what's going on. You know who the characters are. Yoda makes an appearance, but it's still like new Jedi's, new stories, and everyone hated it.
Okay, that's a lie because I actually thought it was pretty good.
Good.
There were definitely a couple episodes where I was just like, what? But I was like, by the end of it, I was like, no, I want to know more about these characters. I want to know more about what's happening here. And I was so excited to have like new people to talk about in this world. And then they're like, oh, we're gonna cancel because nobody watched it. And you're just like, what do you mean nobody watched it? People watched
Yeah.
it. They're just being really bitchy about it. That means you gotta correct them by making another season. That's what
Yeah.
you have to do. But no, I agree with you. Like I was really happy about it. And I was like, why? It's not that there's maybe it's just how they're telling the stories, but it's not really that it's new characters. Because The Mandalorian is all new characters as well, and people really liked it. Maybe
Yeah, I
it's just
mean,
about how the story's told.
you get into the whole thing about like there's those cavemen who are like, oh, there's too many women in it, and there's um like I don't know, too much diversity, blah blah blah. I don't know like how like if these are just bots or if these are actually real people who believe this. I think I've seen like videos of like streamers and reviewers who do kind of have those complaints, which is just stupid because then we're never going to get anything new.
Yeah.
Like we're never going to get those new stories that we're always asking for because something they try something new and then everyone hates it and it gets
Yeah.
canceled. All right, let's do the Skywalkers again. Like,
Yeah, because a lot of people want the same thing over and over. But the problem is too, is like if you give them the same thing, then they complain and connect the dots and all this kind of stuff. And you're just like, look, it's not gonna be perfect because it's not real. So here, and you're like, oh, I we want to put some fan service in it, so we like did a thing, but you're like, that doesn't make any sense, blah 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 blah. And I agree with you. They're just like, oh, it's too woke, or there's too many women, or there's too this, or there's too that. And I'm like, you clearly haven't been watching all this stuff beforehand if you're complaining this much about it, to be honest. And there's nothing wrong with having a Star Wars story that focuses on a woman. What is wrong?
yeah,
What's wrong with that? Like it to me it doesn't make any sense. Jedi's can be male and female from different planets and all this kind of stuff. It's fine.
I mean the only rule apparently around Jedi's is they have to be trained as children. Um,
Yeah.
and they even broke that rule. Like there's no rules anymore.
Mm,
So who
yeah.
cares?
Um,
Just do
I
something new.
I did have a question, which I think is an issue with a lot of sci-fi in general, especially like sci-fi that takes place in like deep space and stuff, where you have a lot of humanoid looking characters And it's never really clear, like they're from different planets, all this kind of stuff, but it's not really clarified if they're human. And in this movie specifically, Attack of the Clones, uh, um, so Anakin is talking to Padme, and he says something, and she's like, "Well, he's having emotions essentially," and she's like, "Well, you're human." I'm like, "Are they? Are they human? I don't think they're human." Because, galaxy, long time ago, galaxy far, far away. And as far as I know, humans are from Earth. I don't know. I was just
Well,
confused by the use of the language because despite it being people and humanoid, I never think of anybody in Star Wars technically as being human.
you didn't? I kind of just
Like,
defaulted to.
I don't know. I hear galaxy far, far away. I'm like, they're humanoid looking, but they're not necessarily humans. I think it's just like, if she was referred to like you're only Tatooine or whatever, I'd have been like, oh, okay, this is fine. But I don't know. I think it's just the use of the word human in the actual dialogue threw me for a loop for some reason.
I think there's a bunch of that stuff, and it's like you kind of have to forgive to a certain degree just to make it relatable to your audience. Like I think people made a similar argument when Han Solo in The Force Awakens uses the term mumbo jumbo, because like obviously mumbo jumbo is a term that came up on the planet Earth and has a reason why those like letters and words came together, which doesn't make sense in the context of Star Wars. But it's like, okay, your audience watching this is humans from the planet Earth and they need characters to be relatable. So it's like, I'm just gonna forgive all of that.
Mhm.
At least it's not like I feel like it's a little better, and you might hate me for this, but like than Star Trek, because Star Trek, a lot of the races are so similar to humanity. It's like
Yeah.
a couple of wrinkles on their face. And I feel like there are well-defined alien races within Star Wars that gets
Mhm.
repeated and you have characters and it's like, you got planet full of squid people and you got a planet full of like, bug people in Geonosis. And it's like, it seems reasonably well thought out, and these planets are kind of like cross-populated. It's like, okay, sure, I'm on board.
Yeah, no, I get it. It was just it's not the fact that like I know in the dialogue they're trying to make it relatable to people. And I'm not mad about your Star Trek comment because you are correct. Um, it's just like the concept of them using a term like human or coming across as human, just sort of I don't know, it just like I said, it just because they said it out loud, it threw me for a loop. Not that they aren't human or not that they can't relate to their audience. I was just like, and in the scene, I understand what they were trying to do. It just made me do that puppy dog head tilt. Like what? You know.
I get,
So
yeah, I get where you're coming from because there's a few examples of that. Like Dexter's Diner looks a little too much like a 50s diner.
I have a note on
Um,
that. Yeah. Hmm.
I don't know if you recently watched what's the most recent show that came out with the kids? But like they
Skeleton
all,
Crew.
yeah, Skeleton Crew, they all grew up in like a suburban neighborhood that looks very
Oh,
much like Earth with like school buses.
yeah.
Um,
But
so
I
it's like you
loved
gotta,
that show. Though it was great.
oh, that's the whole argument right there. Um, but I get what you say about like you got to mask it a little bit. Like if they referred to the language as being English, that would be disrupting. And like they knew not to do that. They call it common. It's like okay, generic language. It just so happens to be English because we, the audience, need to understand. So I definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I was just like I said, I was like, what? What? Oh, okay. I got over it very quickly, but head tip. Like I said, head tip. It was fine. What else? Yes, you just mentioned the 50s diner, which had me crazy confused. Because I was like, this is weird. But they also did it in which one did they do it in? They did it in Boba Fett, where there was like a greaser biker gang for some
Oh
reason.
Yeah.
God. Don't even.
Uh, which I was just like, I was literally watching the TV and yelling at it. I was like, what is this? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. But this kind of, I feel like Boba Fett, somebody rewatched this movie. They're like, they have a 50s diner. We can have greasers. And that's why they did it, probably, is what I'm getting at. But I was just like, no, please don't. Don't do this.
That's actually a better explanation than I ever could have come up with. Just because just seeing them, like my eyes rolled back into my neck watching the Book of Boba Fett. I was not
Yeah.
a big fan of that.
No. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I watched Boba Fett, and I was like you, I was just like, what is this nonsense? Then watching this today, I was just like, oh, is this what was this the justification for that? Was what my brain did. And but I was still unimpressed by all of it. I was like, this
Well,
makes no sense.
yeah, I mean it's tough. Like when you there, it's a double-edged sword when you have such a huge galaxy. Because sure, you can have all these like unique aliens and like just all these different things, but then you have to like create new languages or like every like whole sections of the movie will have to be subtitled if you really want to like lean into that alien diversity.
Hmm.
And that's the problem with like multiverse movies too, right? Like I know people complain about, I don't know, I'll use the Doctor Strange movie as an example. Like you go through all these different multiverses, but like it's always just people, which I mean, sure, it's not very different, but it's really hard to do if you're gonna make someone like just make them out of paint or something. You can't
Yeah.
do like whole stretches of movie like that.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit forgiving on like some of what if you look at the Jedi Council in the prequel movies, it's like, oh, that's the Russian Jedi and that's the Jamaican Jedi, and it's like okay, you took some shortcuts there. And I'm okay with that because you're building such a big world. It's like okay, you
Yeah.
have to copy something at some point.
There are some points where they do get like kind of lazy with it, and they're like, "Oh, Coruscant, the whole planet is one big city," or like Camino, the whole planet is one big ocean, or Kashyyyk, it's a forest, and it's like, okay, it doesn't have the whole thing doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, but that I feel like that's a thing that's in a lot of sci-fi, especially like where like people are planet hopping or going to other dimensions. For some reason, they go to another planet. It's known for one thing, and everybody wears a uniform or something. Like everybody wears a purple jumpsuit for some reason, but some people have like a white stripe. And then another planet, everybody wears like a robe, and they're different colored robes, but they're all the same robe. And then another planet, like I don't know, I don't even know what other people wear. They all wear t-shirts. I don't know. But like for some reason, like each planet has like their own uniform and their own code. And you're like, you accept it because you're just like, I don't know what other planets are doing. But if you think about Earth, there's like you can walk down the street and see five people and they look completely different. Like they will look completely different. And you're like, why wouldn't that be the same thing on another planet? But then you also think of a poor costume designer in a corner going like, I don't know what they're gonna wear in this planet. Oh no, based on like the weather
Except
or
for the
whatever.
yeah, except for the costume designer for Padme, because that person just like went off every movie.
They did. They did. Oh my, it was like every time you see her, she's in a completely different outfit,
Yeah.
done completely differently, and you're just like, you had like 35 people on this one dress, didn't you? And then it was on screen for 6 seconds, clip to the next scene, and you're like, no.
They knew that they knew their audience.
Yeah. This is what we're here for. We're here for the fashion show, not the space battles, just the fashion show and the love story. Okay, that's it.
Yeah,
That's what we're here for.
100%, which is like definitely not my only note about episode two, which is like the love story is like the worst thing in any of the Star Wars movies.
But speaking of Padme, like I do like that. Um, I mean, sometimes she does come across as quote unquote damsel in distress, but most of the time she's very like strong-willed. She takes care of herself. And I like in this movie when they are captured, and they're all tied up. You see the scene where she puts something in her mouth, and she's the first one, like, out of her cuffs, ready to do something. I'm just
Mhm.
like, yes, girl, yes, let's get this done. It's great.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Like Obi-Wan's just like, yeah, I think she can take care of herself. And she's like on top of the pole already, one
Yeah.
arm out. She's like ready to go. She's like,
Yeah,
I'm
not
not
like
gonna
two
die here
trained
today.
Jedi warriors.
You're
But I feel like it
right.
was also like appropriately reined in. Like if you see the character of Padme in the Clone Wars TV show, like she's just like this action hero who's always like going into every battle like full speed, and it's like it gets a little silly. Like I feel like she's appropriately positioned as bold, but not her expertise. Like she's making the best out of her scenario and doing what she can. They go a little too silly and a bit too far with that in the cartoon.
In the cartoon, yeah. Yeah, and like that's the thing I like about it is she's not putting herself in danger, but if she is in danger, she can take care of herself. And she's not, and if she thinks she's doing the right thing, she does the right thing. She's like, no, 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 we're not gonna let people die or my friend's in danger. I'm gonna go save them. I'm gonna do what I need to do to help the best way I can help, and I'm gonna be there. But she's not just like she's like, oh, you're gonna go battle here? Well, okay, I'm gonna come with you. And yeah, guns a blazing into like everything, which would just be nuts for a politician.
Just more great qualities for Padme.
Hmm.
She's perfect.
Yeah. I do have another question about Padme though. I probably could have just Googled this, but I didn't think about it until right now. How old is she supposed to be? Especially in the Clone Wars. She's queen, and all the queens seem to be, because the queen that comes after her is also seems to be quite young. But like, how old is she supposed to be?
I think she was supposed to be as old as Natalie Portman was at that time, which I remember because I remember watching this on like behind the scenes clips that like she turned 18 between episode one and episode two. So she would have been like
Wow.
15, 16. Because I remember them pointing out like, oh, she's 18 in episode two. We can show a little bit more skin.
Oh my God. You put it that way now, it seems gross. But
yeah.
but yes.
It's just Anakin behind the camera, like, yes.
Finally.
But yeah, I think they mentioned that the queen who came after her, their elected queen, I guess, whatever their politics are, that she was like 14 or 15 or something, like kind of, I don't know. That's the way.
Yeah, I did get heavy teenager vibes in the
Yeah.
the first one.
Because if she was like
So,
20 when she met Anakin as like a 9-year-old, then that gets really creepy.
but that's the thing. I still think it's creepy. No, like no matter what. Okay, so that movie came out in 1990. So, uh, if she's supposed to be the age she was when the movie came out, she was 18 when Phantom Menace came out. Because she's born in 1981. This came out in 1999. So yeah, she would have been 18 when that movie came out. Or 17 maybe. Maybe it's
I,
before her
I
birthday.
interpreted it more as like 15, 16 in episode one is what she was supposed to be. Like maybe
Mhm.
Natalie Portman was like a year or two older than that, but
So then how old is Anakin supposed to be? Is he supposed to be
I
like
think he's like
10?
9 years old.
He's like 9. So, but even that's a full 10-year difference in age. Like it's still
Yeah.
kind of creepy when you think about it. But also like Anakin, like even in the scene where they first meet, Anakin's like, "Are you an angel?" Because I've never seen one before, but I heard about angels and you look like an angel. I was just like, Anakin, no, you're a child. Scandal. That's all I kept thinking.
Just, hey, you're talking about things in terms of our Earth cultures and our Earth customs. Like we don't know what it's like out
Life
there
is
in a
different
galaxy
on
far,
Tatooine.
far away.
That
I
is
mean,
true. I have to respect their ways of life.
I mean, we say that, but I was thinking the same thing when I was 9 years old watching that movie.
Oh my God. This is what I get. This is what I
We
get. It's
gotta we
fine.
gotta
It's fine.
stop talking about Padme in case my wife watches this.
Stop talking about that.
Okay.
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
Okay, before we get there, Let's see. So the chase scene through the asteroids.
Oh,
Um,
Jango Fett.
yes. Uh, again, I think it looked like a low res video game. Eh,
Oh, hold on
What?
here.
I'm
That is
sorry.
one of my
What?
favorite
I am
scenes of episode two.
sorry.
The
I was
sound is amazing,
the sound. I will agree. The sound is amazing. I will say all of these movies sound amazing. Yes.
but that Jango Fett starship is coming out on a bigger Lego set this year, and that's on my to buy list. But I love that ship. I love that scene. Uh, yeah,
Okay.
There's not even supposed to be sound in space, which is hilarious. But
that's okay.
yeah,
That's okay.
this
We're
is
gonna accept
like
it. It's fine.
the biggest pass again for that.
Yes. Even I'm gonna let that pass. I'm like, nobody cares. Just let. I need to hear the pew pew, or else I'm gonna cry. Like it needs to
I'm glad
happen.
that they didn't try to change that, that they just said, hey, this was established in 1977 and this is what people are used to and we're just going to stick with it, as opposed to them being because I think in the more recent Star Trek movies, like they've made space more realistic, haven't they? Um,
Uh, not quite. They do tend to they sort of like what do you call it? Not muted, but like yeah, no, it's more muted.
Muffled.
The like yeah, the sounds of stuff happening.
it's like
While they show
people
like outside shots.
going back to like Acolyte, like people were complaining about, oh, there's a fire going on in space. It's
Yeah.
like there's been sound in space this whole time. We don't need to worry about fire in
Yeah.
space.
I heard about that. I was so like, but if you watch even like the original series, ships blow up and
They
on
have it.
fire and
Yeah.
crash into other ships, and you hear like "Wah," and you see the flames, and you're still hearing the pew pew. Nobody complained about it, but an acolyte, apparently, fire in space is a bad thing. You're like, it just leave it. It's fine.
It's awesome.
Yes. Now, if they did that in an alien movie, I'd be mad because nobody can hear you in space is their like tagline. That's different. It's fine. Um, so you disagree with the low res video game comment. Sounds beautiful
Yeah.
though.
So just to be clear, absolutely clear, you don't like the effects of the whole Obi-Wan Jango space battle. It like feels cheap to you, or like it just doesn't look great. I
It
really
does
need
not
to get to the
no,
bottom of this.
no, I like the idea of the chase. I like that there is a chase.
Yeah,
Don't get me
we're talking
wrong.
visuals, 100%.
But visually, I find, like I said, it looks like a relatively low res video game. Like if I'm sitting at home, I put in Star Wars Attack of the Clones video game, and there's a scene through an asteroid belt, and I pick my ship and I'm flying it. But my computer's old and a little chuggy, so I reduced the res a little bit. That's what it looks like.
Okay, I don't know. I'm like, I mean, clearly disagree,
Clearly,
but
yes.
I mean, because like the battles, again, I'm not going to keep beating the dead horse, but like the visuals, like all the effects, especially in this scene throughout the prequel trilogy, I feel like just they hold up 100%. Like, and especially the battles after Padme are like my favorite of parts of the prequels.
I do have the exact same comment when he's on Tatooine and speed and takes off on the speed racer to kill the sand people. I have the
Yeah.
exact same comment. Just
You thought it was
FYI.
bad?
I think visually it looks bad. Yes.
Man. How do you feel about the end battle on Geonosis when it's like droids versus clones all out like war scene?
Well, it's all animated, so it was fine.
So you don't like when it's like animated with live action?
Yeah, because they don't know how to properly integrate it together, and it looks off. Like it just looks bad. But I think the people who are animating just a scene that is all CG characters has a completely different skill set than the people who are animating a scene around a character because there's different parameters required to integrate the real character in it. And you can tell, you can see it. But also as a person watching it, if you're seeing something that's all animated, your brain's just like, oh, it's animated, it's fine. But you see a real person in a space, and you're just like, but it's supposed to be real. Like, it's what my brain does. And I think that might be what the problem is.
I mean, that's fair. Like I wouldn't apply it necessarily to these movies, but that's kind of why I can't really get into like actual anime or like cartoons that much because when my brain sees like okay, none of this is real, I kind of like tune out a little bit.
Oh.
And even some like super CGI heavy movies, like it'll take me out of it a little bit
Mhm.
when it's just not real enough, quote unquote. But I mean, I don't know. I gotta pull out that super pass again. Apply it to Clone
Mhm.
Wars, especially the battle on Geonosis. Um, oh wait, but you I think you were okay. You said you were okay with that one. So
Yes, yeah. Well, I think what my like I love cartoons. Like I love cartoons. And I think in a cartoon, the suspension of disbelief is goes a lot further because you know it's not real. So if something you're just like people can't do that, but you're like it's a cartoon, it's fine. Whereas, you see somebody live action like people can't do that. That's stupid because it's a person. That's crazy is what the thing is. So like when I see an animated show and somebody does something like weird and wacky, I'm like, yeah, because it's a cartoon. And my brain's just like, yay, cartoon. I don't know. But I think my whole problem with a lot of it is that it's so much animation with a random person in it that my brain the suspension of disbelief cuts real early because there's a real person in it.
I think it's also a little bit because the direction is really bad. Like the actors are not given enough direction to know how to respond to what's going around them in CG. I think because of how many CG heavy franchises we've had since then, I think people like actors have learned how to do that a bit better. But combination of it still being early days of that type of stuff and George Lucas is the one giving the direction, I think it's throwing it off not just because it's jarring that there's live action and animation beside each other, but it's like the live action people are not interacting with the animation in a way that makes you believe it. Whereas if you were to do something like House of the Dragon or something where people are interacting with a dragon or, Lord of the Rings, which is at the same time of them interacting with Gollum, it's like when the when the direction is good and the acting and the actors know how to do it, it can work. It's just specifically what was being done in the Star Wars prequels was not very good.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's like when you because sometimes your brain subconsciously picks up on things that you don't even realize you're picking up on. And it could be one of those things where it's like, no, he's not making eye contact right, or he's looking over something instead of at something, and my brain's picking up, but I'm not technically picking it up. And so to me, automatically it's like, it's because it's bad CG. Like that might
Yeah,
be what's
one of the
happening.
big examples that gets picked up, and we're segueing into like Revenge of the Sith here, but when Obi-Wan faces off against General Grievous and General Grievous pulls out his four lightsabers, like Obi-Wan doesn't even flinch. Like George Lucas probably didn't tell him like, hey, you have to respond to these lightsabers coming at you. And so it looks weird because it's like you can tell that they're not really interacting with each other. Whereas I think a little bit of direction and a little bit of like tweaking that up could make it feel better.
Yeah, or maybe if you give direction to somebody, like maybe he gave him the wrong direction. Originally, Grievous was supposed to be designed some different way, and he was like, pretend you're seeing this and it's fine. Whereas later on, he's just like, no, make sure he has four arms and they're doing crazy things or something, maybe. And he was like, he just has the reaction to the wrong thing, and
or
we're
Obi-Wan was
picking it up.
just such a badass that it just didn't affect him. It's
He's
like
like, He's like,
four.
one or four? I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
cool. Also totally possible. Also totally possible.
I also like how that one scene, like him saying hello there, like gave birth to like it just gave that line life for the next 20 years. Like,
Every once
wow.
in a while, it still pops up somewhere. So I'm like, I'm good with it. I'm good
Yeah.
with it. Um, I did like, so there is a scene where, so when Shmi dies, and who is it? Yoda senses Anakin's pain, and they have like the three notes of Darth Vader's theme play uh
Like
subtly in the music.
right
And I
before
was
he
like,
kills all the sand people.
yeah, I was like, oh, that was good. That was good. That was a good one.
Was it at that time? Because there's this a point where Liam Neeson chimes in as Qui-Gon's like dead ghost, and he goes like, "Anakin, no!" I can't remember if it's on that scene or if it's when he goes to like the Jedi Temple in Revenge of the Sith. But little
Wait,
things like that.
what?
So there's a scene where Anakin is turning evil, and like it's a dream, and then you hear the slightest voice of Liam Neeson going like, "Anakin, no!" Which I think they pulled out of episode one of like unrelated dialogue, but it's like it sounds like Qui-Gon's Force Ghost
I
is
think that's a
saying like,
third. I think that's another scene. Like this is a third scene that you're talking about now.
Is it
I
when
got
Anakin's having the dreams and he sees uh like Obi-Wan's like looking over Padme? Is it like that part where he like gets up or
No,
something?
I think this is all around. Maybe not the exact scene where he's like on Tatooine or like after like finding his mother. It's like leading up to that and that scene. Like these things all happen in that sequence.
Okay.
possibly, I don't remember the
Okay.
exact scene.
I missed it. I missed that. But
You're
yeah.
just completely just checked out. Like when will this be
Well, no,
a
actually, I will say at that scene, I'm not sure who's the actress that plays Shmi. Anyways, she does the best acting in the whole movie in her death scene. I like she's
Yeah.
there. She's like you're just like, oh no, she's in pain. Oh, she's dying. Oh, she is dying. Oh my God. Like I think she does the best acting in the whole movie in that like 3 seconds or
I
whatever.
mean, that's not a big achievement. That's not a, it's a pretty low bar.
It is a pretty low bar. I will agree with you.
It is very sad though.
It is very sad. Well, but the thing is, because she did a good job at that scene is actually affecting, you know? Whereas I think if she did a bad job, you'd have been like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Get over it,
Yeah.
Anakin.
But you wonder, but because she did a good scene and he walks out and starts murdering people, you're just like, yeah, yeah, he is gonna murder people now. This is what's gonna happen.
You needed a little bit more in between to lead up to that stuff. Like, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but like the Clone Wars does a little bit of better job of giving that little bit of in between because there's certain times when they're fighting people where Obi-Wan is like too good and Anakin will go in and just like straight murder somebody, which is weird for a kids show, but it's like he can be like, hey, it was justified. I'm saving people's lives. And so it's like the character arc in the movies feels very jarring because you're moving a character very quickly that hasn't been established. And I feel like that type of character arc you almost needed like 3 or 4 seasons of a TV show to again establish the relationship with Padme, set him up as a good Jedi, show like, hey, he's a little too bold at times to being like, oh, the anger is taking over. Like it's a very ambitious thing to try to accomplish in what is effectively 2 movies because Anakin's barely a character in the first movie. And so it's very rushed.
Hmm. No, I agree with you. Like how they spread it out in there. You're like, how come in this scene you were fine, but this scene you're a psycho? What's happening here exactly? You know? And I definitely felt that in Revenge of the Sith. But we'll get there in 1 second. Um, and oh, also, like I said, I did not remember most of the beats of this movie, but when Count Dooku, so Obi-Wan's been captured, Count Dooku goes in and is talking to him and he's like no, the Senate's been taken over by a Sith Lord. We're trying to stop his reign of terror. And Obi-Wan's like, no, you're not, you're lying and blah blah blah. I was just like, wait, I don't remember Count Dooku being a good guy. This is crazy. But of course, as the movie goes on, it changes. But I was legitimately shook when I heard that line and I was like, what? It made me perk up for a second, so then I had to pay attention to the rest of the movie. There you go.
Wait, is it the one where Obi-Wan was captured, you said, and like
Yeah, and he was like he was held like hovering in like
It's the
the
yes,
very
shield
first
or
time you meet
whatever.
Dooku, yeah.
Yeah. And so so because Obi-Wan had seen they were like at the table and like the people were just like, yeah, we'll sign your treaty, we'll sign your treaty,
Yeah.
we'll get the robot army, and he was like, no, he's going against the Senate. And then Dooku's just like, no, 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 we're going against the Senate because the guy in charge is a Sith Lord. And Obi-Wan was like, no, 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 you're corrupted and you're wrong. But I was like, no, Dooku's saying the right. Is he a good guy? And then of course later on you realize it was like it was all Palpatine's plan, and Dooku was just like telling him this so he wouldn't believe him to help him start the war. And you're like,
I would
okay,
say
no, he was a
maybe,
bad guy.
yeah, maybe Count Dooku actually gave the best performance in the movie because he was so believable in trying to convince Obi-Wan that
Hmm.
he was actually a good guy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think like the Palpatine's plan is totally based on people's reactions to things. And if Obi-Wan wasn't so like, for example, if Obi-Wan didn't overhear them signing the treaty and Count Dooku told him this, I think Obi-Wan would have listened and been like, huh, maybe we should check into this more and maybe have not started a war. But, we'll never know because that's not what they showed us. And then Palpatine's plan would have been ruined.
Yeah, I
Trying
mean,
so hard not to jump in with the lore that explains this all because it's not a part of the movie. And yeah,
It's in Clone Wars, or it's in a book, or it's in.
it's in a few different places.
Okay.
But effectively, like the theory is Dooku knew that Sidious, like he was not the true apprentice that Sidious wanted, and he knew that Sidious was going to betray him at some point, and so he was trying to get someone else on his side so that he could go after and try to dethrone Sidious.
Got it. Okay. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, because just like the Jedi, the Sith can sense betrayals or can pseudo see the future-ish stuff, I guess.
they always say they can, but
Mm.
I feel like they just never
Very
really get
vague.
that
It's
right.
very vague. It's very vague. Got it. Yes. Um, yeah. I don't know. And then, of course, before they go out to get killed, which they survive, Padme is like, "I love you, Anakin." And my
Oh
question
God,
is like, "What do you mean you love him? Why? What is happening here?" I didn't understand it, but that's just me.
that
And
sorry, like that just brought up like vomit, but like it reminded me of um I think there's one point where like Anakin was like, "Oh, you're torturing me like with that kiss that you never should have gave me," and it's like, "Oh my God!" Like just more of like number one, bad dialogue. Number two, Anakin being such a creepy creep.
yeah, he's a whiny creep. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's
it's
kind of
somehow
like going to the bar, like, I bought you a drink, so we have to go have that.
oh
You're like,
God,
no,
oh God.
no, that's not how it works. That's She could do what she wants still. It's fine.
But apparently it worked.
Apparently it worked in some weird, odd way. But my last note for this movie, so during the battle or whatever, Mace Windu chops off Jango Fett's head, and his helmet rolls away with presumably his head in it. And one of the last scenes is you see Boba Fett picking up the helmet, and I'm sitting there going like, is Jango's head gonna fall out of it?
You got to
Is
rewatch
his
the
gonna
head
fall?
chopping scene because the shadow shows his head coming out of the helmet.
Oh, does it?
It does. It
Okay.
very clearly does it because yes, otherwise that head would drop right out of there.
Because
I
that's
didn't
what
even
I
know
was
that.
waiting for. I was like, I know it's a kids movie, but it should happen. It should happen. Okay. So I missed the shadow. Okay. Got it. Got it. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. I just thought the head was like really in there. Like
It's
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 just
just
it's
not.
like two frames. You have to like really slow it down to see it, but like you do see because you don't see the head flying off. You see like the shadow of the head flying off, and then you see two objects flying away, one the head, one the helmet.
got it. Okay. Okay. So I mean, I'm done with my notes for this movie. Anything that you like need to bring up for Attack of the Clones?
My only note on Attack of the Clones was Padme, so I think we already talked about more.
Okay, we did this. We did this already. Okay, got it. Got it. So then now we're in the third movie of this prequel trilogy, Revenge of the Sith. And I mean, this is a movie that has all like the wars and the battles and the pew pews and the sword fighting and all this kind of stuff. And I was surprised that this came across surprisingly more boring than the other two. So I don't know. Or maybe I was just tired and didn't want to watch them anymore. But
I agree
yeah,
with you. Uh, there are some exciting scenes. I think the end lightsaber battle is incredibly boring. I didn't get much out of it. The opening scene, the space battle, I think has a fantastic opening shot. The battle itself is whatever. But there's some really fun moments in the movie. I think Order 66 is done really well for like that 30 seconds.
yeah,
Um, but it's a pretty boring story because at that point you kind of there's not much more story to tell. You kind of know what's going to happen.
It's just a bridge between
yeah,
the prequels and the original trilogy, kind of.
yeah. Well,
Well,
because they spend so much time on the war, which we know it's a war, so there's going to be lots of battles. I get it. But like half the movie is them just showing battles, and you're just like, we know what's happening in different places. We don't need to see an hour's worth of it, I think.
which
So like it gets
I'm fine
boring after a
with,
while. You're
actually.
fine with?
Because I mean, I love a good battle, especially a Star Wars one. I
Hmm.
mean, at that point, like everyone said, the story doesn't matter that much anymore. So like for episode three, sure, it's not my favorite, but like I think it's one where I can just enjoy to like turn my brain off and be like, nice lasers, nice.
Yeah, because
Like,
it's not a movie, really. It's kind of like here is a montage of events to just fill in some gaps for you, and that's about it.
yeah, I just think it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It's just did not need to be that long. I'm okay with it being filler, but that's a lot of filler.
So you guys have kind of answered it, I think, indirectly already, but between the three, like how would you rank them?
Like how we like the movies.
Yeah.
I think the order that they're in. Like
Oh,
I don't think any of these movies are particularly great. Actually, no, that's a lie. I'll flip it. Uh I would say Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith, then Attack of the Clones, because Attack of the Clones is just mind numbing. Um, except for the outfits. We've already gone over this, but yes, except for the outfits. Um, but like it's just but it also like it makes me uncomfortable. Like all the like quote unquote, love scenes, the falling in love story, every time it's on screen, I'm just like, oh my God, no. Like it just hurts me in some way. So I no. I can't. Yeah.
But it's also the more believable because you have very few Anakin and Padme scenes together. It's like it's more Padme with Obi-Wan or it's Anakin like doing other stuff. Like I find the dialogue is the most tolerable in the third movie. Um, except for like Obi-Wan talking to R2 at the beginning. But other than that, I would say like it's probably the best made movie in terms of just craftsmanship, like making a movie. But that's also because there's very little story left to be told.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to rate them. They're kind of different.
Um, uh, yeah, no, I will agree with you on that. I feel like Revenge of the Sith, by the time they got there, they finally got into like a certain, let's say, call it a groove of how to make them. And so I think that's why, as a movie maker, it seems because lack of story, but there was more like of a cohesive feel, I think, to Revenge of the Sith than the other two movies.
sort of a lack of cohesive feel.
No. The Revenge of the Sith has a cohesive feel like
Oh,
throughout the movie, whereas I think the other two, like because of all of the jumping around and the each time they jump, they're telling completely different stories, so it doesn't feel like one movie essentially. Whereas I feel like Revenge of the Sith actually feels it's not great, but it feels like one movie.
It feels like this is the story he actually wanted to tell, and the first two movies were just like filler to set the stage for it. So I think that's why it feels more coherent, is because it's like everything was setting this up. Like that was the point. Whereas like really you could have taken the story that was in episode three and just say that's the trilogy and just do all the stories within that. But it's like they started it way too soon.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this is what he wanted to get to. So it's like, okay, I'm here finally.
But also, I think this is what everybody was for. They're like, no, we want to see Darth Vader be created. And you're just like, you're watching the whole movie to see Darth Vader be created. Um,
That's also
and
the least interesting part because like spoiler alert, he becomes Vader. Like you already know. And so that's the trouble with prequels for me is like same with like Rings of Power, which is like a whole other set of issues, but it's like I know what's going to happen. Like there's no tension. Like for me it's much more interesting when I'm going into something and I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know who's going to survive. I don't know what's going to happen and like there's just no tension in episode 3, you know exactly where everyone is going to end up.
Mhm.
well, I mean, there's a little bit like I mean, thinking back to when I first saw it, like I kind of know that the Jedi are all going to die. I know that Mace Windu is not going to be successful in arresting or killing the Emperor, but like I still, I guess, I don't know. At the time, I was invested enough to like kind of feel bad about it or just be like, be uncomfortable when I'm watching all the Jedi dying. Like I didn't like it. I
Yeah,
Oh,
mean,
that was a
like,
great scene. They did it really well.
yeah,
they did. That is the best scene in the movie. As soon as the Order 66 go in and they jump to like the different Jedi and them being betrayed, I was just like, oh man, like it
yeah,
really those scenes come across really, really well.
it's a gut
It
punch for
it
sure.
is. Yeah.
Especially if you watch the Clone Wars TV shows where it's like each of those Jedi has like 10 episodes where you
Yeah,
really get to know them and then it's like they're not just throwaway Jedi. It's like it's people you know.
Yeah.
yeah.
They become part of this story that you're invested in. And yeah.
Here's a question for you guys because we talked about them potentially remaking the original trilogy. Do you foresee a future where they just say, "Hey, we got to remake the prequels to make them make sense to, the original trilogy and just clean up some of the stuff?" Like, could you see that happening?
I think if they remake the original trilogy and it makes money and people like it, they'll definitely do it.
100%.
Yeah, they will definitely do it. I don't see why they wouldn't. They're like, oh, we made all of the money again? Sure. Like they definitely get in there. But I just hope they manage to get people that have chemistry together and you can believe this. Like I know it seems weird, but I know about the Jedi are supposed to be like relatively stoic and all this kind of stuff. So they are supposed to be a little bit like stilted and choppy and just, go into battles and then have quick quips. But my one of my biggest problems is like the love story doesn't work. And when Padme dies in this movie, sorry, spoiler, Padme dies in this movie. Like her just dying for a lack of will to live when you when I don't believe the love story and she's giving up because the love of her life has betrayed her, it just doesn't it falls flat because I don't believe that story. And I think for Darth Vader to work after and for you to care about that scene at the end and for you to accept her death, you're just like I need this love story to work. And I feel like that's half what they need to focus on.
It does for sure. This goes back to one thing I was talking about previously of like conspiracy theories making rewatch better. Because I, in repeat viewings, I love Padme's death at the end more because the theory on that is Palpatine tells him like he found a way to prevent people from dying. And the general theory is like, oh, why is she dying? It's because he's keeping Anakin alive by draining Padme's life force and putting it into Anakin. And so it's like, oh, she's not dying out of a broken heart. He's like, she's dying for unexplained reasons, which is because, Palpatine's doing this stuff. So it's like one of
Yeah.
those things which, again, hard to give credit to the movie because they do not mention it at all. But it's just a fun little thing that makes repeat viewing more interesting.
Yes,
That
yeah, I
is
would.
damage control. That's
Yes.
that conspiracy.
Because it's like, even if they made the slightest, I know it's a conspiracy theory or whatever, but like, if they made the slightest reference to that, then I would have accepted it 10 times more. And I agree with you. Thinking about it more, if it was like, ooh, is Palpatine? Because I know Palpatine is using her to control Anakin, right? And even when he gets turned into Darth Vader, he's like, no, she's dead, even though he doesn't know that yet in the movie context. But if they do like a quick 2 seconds of like, I'm draining her power or whatever, it just makes so much more sense all of a sudden. Like, it makes more sense. And yeah, that would definitely make a rewatch 10 times better, easily.
But no, we had to get stuck with the dialogue of Anakin, you're breaking my heart.
Yeah. Or I know this is also pretty nitpicky, but the robot's like, here's your baby. That's Luke. You're like, where are these names coming from? You're just, here's, oh, it's a girl. It's Leia. You're like, and you know what the names are gonna be, but they didn't even have like that scene be like, oh, what are we gonna name our kids? What if it's a
Yeah.
boy? This. What if it's a girl? This. And I know that would slow down a little bit, but also it would add to the love story to make it more believable.
Actually,
I mean,
I never really thought of that, but it would have added a little more weight or just more weight to Anakin and Padme and just Luke and Leia surviving.
Yeah.
Um, like there's just zero, like those are her last words, Luke and
Hmm.
Leia,
Yeah.
and it's never mentioned before why they're
Yeah.
gonna.
And like, we know Padme's gonna die. We know Anakin's gonna be Darth Vader. We know the kids are gonna be called Luke and Leia. But it literally seems at the end they're just like, so how do you want to figure out how they get their names? It's just like, just say she calls them Luke and Leia. Just put it in there, is what the script essentially says, and but I'm like, no, you need to put more. We know it's going to happen, so you need to have a good reason why it's happening that way for us to, as the audience and as fans, to be invested in these names that these kids have. And you have to pretend that the sequels don't exist. And what if somebody's, sometimes, well, these movies were definitely the first Star Wars movies for somebody. And there's a good chance that there's somebody who watched that movie and was just like, Luke and Leia? Why Luke and Leia? And they're like, son, I'll take you home and I'll show you the other movies. You
Well, you
know?
gotta watch these three movies now to.
it
Exactly.
it does feel a little bit like that last half hour of the movie, like it's just on autopilot. It's like, okay, it's a ship coming in, it's going to the hangar. That runway is basically episode 4, and it's on the path, it's just going. There's no more story, there's no more tension, there's no more storytelling. It's on the way.
Yeah, it's just there. It's just there. And I also feel I remember doing this when I saw this movie in the theater. Actually, I think a lot of the audience did. But when Darth Vader comes out, he finds out about Padme dying, and he stumbles forward out of like the restraining chair he was on or whatever, and he screams, "No!" I still laughed. I laughed at this time, and I laughed back then, and half the audience also laughed. There's just some way that the scene comes across as like it's out of Spaceballs. Like it comes across as a farce.
That was one of the original internet memes, like one of the first, like if you're on an internet message board, like when the internet was first being invented, like that was everywhere.
It was a lot of places. But I literally this time I was looking at it, I was like, oh, it still makes me laugh. Oh my God. It was fun. Also, Oh, sorry, before we even got there, I should have mentioned when they're on Mustafa. Is it Mustafa? No, that's the Lion King. Uh,
Mustafar.
Mustafar. There you go. And Anakin has gone full Sith, and his eyes go all crazy, but his eyes are CG. I was like, that looks crazy. That looks
Were they
awful.
CG or contact lenses?
No,
I don't.
I'm like, okay, if those were contact lenses, something about the final production and whatever color palette they put on it made it look like it was CG, and it looks horrible. And if it was actual CG, the CG looks horrible. But I was looking, I was just like, at some, like, there were scenes where he was like looking up and you could actually like see the eyes. It looked like they had to like place them on his face, and it looked like they were like moving around on his face.
Like googly eyes.
Yeah, I was like, really? You guys don't know how to map a face properly? Come on. But yes. And then he just burst into flames. So, um,
That was another thing that became like a thing, like a huge thing was the high ground,
yeah.
which I mean, going back to like I mean, okay, it makes sense a little bit, but then it just goes like for me, it goes back to episode one where Obi-Wan when Obi-Wan killed sorry, not killed Darth Maul because he didn't die, Clone
Mhm.
Wars.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but he cut him in half, and that was sorry, I missed this when we were first talking about episode one. I don't mean to go back there,
It's okay.
um, but yeah, that was one thing that kind of like stuck in my mind.
Yeah, because he pulls himself literally out of a hole and backflips over him and cuts him in half, right?
Yeah, Darth Maul literally just could have like stuck his hand out with his
Yeah.
with his lightsaber
And
just
it would have
straight
been fun.
at.
Yeah.
And
But even watching the scene in this movie, he's like, don't, I have the high ground. But there is so much space between where Obi-Wan is and where Anakin is. I'm like, he could have just like jumped onto the ground
jump to
and
the
fought
right
him.
or jump to the left.
Left. And he would have been fine. He didn't have to jump over him. Uh, but, he's
And
got to be Darth Vader somehow. So,
it's a little bit forgivable because, again, I understand the idea of what they're going for. Like
yeah.
the fact that Anakin died being overly ambitious, thinking he was more powerful than he actually could have been. Like, I see the idea. The execution was bad, but I understand what story was trying to be told. And so I'm okay with, like, I think for that reason, my brain is okay with forgiving some stuff.
Yeah.
Taking out the pass again,
Yeah.
Mhm.
slapping it right on the script.
Yeah.
I used up all of my passes in 99 to 2005, which is why the MCU got no passes from me.
Oh no. No. Okay. That is a different rabbit hole I can't get into right now. I'm gonna ignore it. It's fine. Everything's fine. Um, so like all of my notes for Revenge of the Sith are nitpicky. And I think it is like as you said, Carson, it's because this movie's on autopilot. We know where it's going. We know where it's ending. So most of my arguments for this movie are nitpicky. Like there's a scene where like Grievous breaks a window on a spaceship and walks on the outside, and I'm like, I know he's a robot, but he has organic parts, so it would kill him outside that anyways. Like this is the comments that I was making for this movie. It's fine. But is there like any particular like scene or anything you want to talk about in this movie?
It's kind of, yeah, again, for me, it's hard to like take it too serious because just thinking about like going back to Phantom Menace, like it was 99. I was 9 years old watching movies. I was the target audience. By the time that Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005, I would have been like, what, 16 years old or so. And at this point, like I had watched Lord of the Rings trilogy. I was starting to become a movie snob. And so by this time I understood and was on the side of people being like, "Oh, these movies are so terrible. I hated this." So by the time I saw this in theaters, I think I was on that train of hating it too much because it was the fashion to hate on these movies by that point. I was no longer like part of that target audience. Um, and so I think at that time, like maybe didn't appreciate or didn't enjoy the movie, don't have the same nostalgia for it that I have for Phantom Menace because, again, 6 years had gone by. I was a different person when I watched that than when I watched Phantom Menace. So it would have been very different if I had watched Phantom Menace like when I was 16, for
Yes.
example.
Paolo?
Yeah, I'm really thinking about it. I think I was still, like I said before, I was still along for the ride at this point. Like I'm even now, I'm very forgiving for quote unquote bad things, but like I was like right in the middle of like Star Wars fandom at this point. I mean, this one is probably my least favorite of the three, but I mean, it's fine. Like gets the pass. I mean, one thing I will agree on is like the lightsaber battle at the end. I mean, it's supposed to be super like emotional because it's Anakin and Obi-Wan, but it's just a lot of like colorful flailing to me. Um,
Yeah.
So
um,
an interesting point on that one. One of my favorite movies from a couple of years ago, The Northman,
I love
also
that
ends
movie.
with a fight
yeah,
in a volcano at the end. And that was one thing that the fans knew that there was a final epic showdown between Anakin and Obi-Wan in a volcano before even the prequel trilogy started. So people knew that it was building up, and it's like, I think that's why they thought it needed to be this big epic thing. But when you compare the ending of The Northman, which is just like two naked dudes with swords fighting it out in a volcano, like that's an epic ending. Like that was totally earned and I loved it. And it was much more scaled down version of what Revenge of the Sith was because that was just way too much, too
Mhm.
far, like too much choreography for it to even make sense that it lost all emotion.
Do you think,
yeah.
do you think, like watching The Northman, I did not know it was going to end up like that. And so when it got there, I was like, what? This is crazy. But like you were saying, even at the time when they just started the trilogy, people knew it was going to end up at a volcano, right? Do you think maybe, like you were saying before, you're like, we know where the story's ending, therefore it can be boring. Do you think that's the reason why that scene falls flat? Because you knew it like a volcano planet or whatever was gonna happen, so you're just like, well, I know what's gonna happen, so
Uh,
blah.
I think it's just too high of expectations. Like people had been told there was going to be this big epic fight, and so they were expecting amazing thing. And the filmmakers knew that they needed to live up to that scene, and so they tried to make the most epic thing possible. And by trying to make it more, they made it less.
Yeah.
Like there is a version of that scene that you could shoot that was a really well, like again, shoot the Northmen, but just give them lightsabers and call that the scene. And I think people would have like that would have been enough. But the filmmakers tried to do too much because they were trying to live up to something.
Yeah, it goes back to your point about it being like way too choreographed. Like it's too stylized, it's too like fancy fighting, and that's what I mean by like the colorful flailing because their lightsabers are like spinning every like. There's one
Mhm.
point where I think they were on like a platform together, like a floating platform. They're like 1 inch away
Yeah.
from each other, and they're spinning their lightsabers like in
No
the
one seen him
air
talk. Yes,
around
yeah,
each other. It's like
yeah.
literally just go like this, point forward, and one of you is dead. Like, and you
That.
compare that to like
Mhm.
Luke in Return of the Jedi when he's fighting Darth Vader at the very end, and he's like using his lightsaber as like a sledgehammer, and it's not even like a really pretty fight, but like you can feel emotion there. So
Mhm.
like you don't have to make it this whole like spectacle where they're like flipping over things and spinning everything. Like it looks nice, but then it's just in the service of nothing. Like there it means nothing and it feels nothing. Like there's no emotion to it.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of two things I should have brought up earlier. So one of them was Yoda's fight with Count Dooku, right?
Oh, well, yeah, or
Yes.
Palpatine, either one.
Is it No, yes, it is Palpatine. Sorry, it is Palpatine. That's the one I'm thinking of. But so essentially it's two old guys fighting. I get it, right? And the guy who plays Palpatine is not that young, and Yoda is a puppet. I get it. So you've got to do some maybe risky shooting to make it look cool or whatever. But there's before they get into like the Senate and they start throwing the little floaty things at each other, there's two shots that like drive me crazy. There's literally a shot where they're both standing in front of each other. They're whipping their lightsabers around, but it's cut like a music video, and so it shows Yoda's face with like the light going across his face. Then it cuts back to Palpatine, and the light goes across his face, and cuts back and the light goes, and you're just like, but we're not seeing the fight. We're just seeing lights going across each other's face. A, and then the worst thing is like for some reason the Jedi in these movies are real, as I call it, flippy. They do a lot of like flipping all over things. And but again, you can't show an old guy flipping around because he might break a hip. Fine. But they always shot him from waist up and then he would just like pop into a scene. And you're just like, well, clearly you're cutting it because you did a CG flip and he's got to pop into the scene. And it's just like the way they were cutting it back and forth, you're just like, this looks it made it look cheap. Like it made it like it looked like a first George Lucas movie kind of thing. And it was just like I was like, this is supposed to be an epic battle. We're seeing Yoda fight for only the second time. We'll never see him fight again. And he's fighting against Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. And this is what we get. And I think it's the same thing. It's like overly choreographed. And they were trying to be like, oh, we're gonna make this so cool. And then it falls flat.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, it did work, like seeing Yoda fight against Count Dooku, because it's like that, like comeback, like, oh, that's so cool, because like he's already beat up on Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then Yoda starts like flipping all over the place, and then
Mm.
he drops his cane, and then he starts flipping all over the place. I
Yes.
remember watching that in the theater. It's like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Yes.
But then it like, yeah, like how you're saying it in the last one, it doesn't really have uh the same, I guess, weight to it. And I guess it might be for a reason because he's supposed to lose that one. So it's
Hmm.
not as cool, but it's just like, again, on autopilot and nothing really matters at that
Yeah.
point.
That's
For me,
true.
it just feels kind of weird that they're even fighting with lightsabers. Like in my mind, Yoda and Palpatine should be powerful to the point that it's like lightsabers are beneath them. Like they should be using some other type of power. And so it's weird. Like the power of someone like a Palpatine should not be the power to flip around. Like he should be doing something else more interesting. So I always felt it was really weird. Like even in episode two, when Yoda was jumping around fighting Dooku, it's like I don't know that like in episode six when Palpatine's just watching Vader and Luke go at it, and like he's not taking out a lightsaber and going out there and fighting Luke. At the end, he's just like, okay, I'm going to use my lightning because I'm like, I don't need a lightsaber. Like that's for weak people.
Mhm.
And so it's just that whole scene was just really weird for me. It's just like this, like that's not how it should work.
I agree with you. Maybe that's what my real issue is with it because they're supposed to be they're like the pinnacle of where the Sith and the Jedi are want to be, right? And and you're just like they don't even the thing also that gets me is like when they start using the Force and like to push objects around and stuff. I'm like, so why aren't you just like pushing him down instead of throwing a thing at him?
Yeah.
It's like things like that, or like they're like, oh, you're standing there instead of shooting your lightning, you wanna throw a chair at the Duke. Like it just you're just like, okay, like why? This seems like an odd choice to use your power when you can clearly do more.
Yeah. Or
So
Obi-Wan's in a hole. Why don't I just force push him, remove his fingers from the thing he's holding on, like Phantom
yeah.
Menace, right?
Yeah.
Like in a
Or
hole.
he can do the classic like I have a lightsaber, I'm just gonna touch the tips of your fingers.
Yeah.
You don't need those.
Sorry, I don't
And
know why I
just
keep going back.
he's just reached out with it. No, because it's a frustrating scene. I get it. So you return to it all the time. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we did a pretty good job going through these three movies. No? Yes? I think
Very
I
so.
brief
think so.
conversation, yeah.
Our brain.
You can either watch the entirety of Revenge of the Sith or listen to Off My Shelf.
Exactly. But my last question is always like, would you recommend these movies to people? I'm gonna start with Paolo because I feel like Carson's gonna have like a longer answer. So we'll start with Paolo.
Yeah, yes, with an asterisk. Just yes, just know they're not great films, but it means a lot to a lot of people, and they're fun to watch, and the effects stack up. I will die on that hill.
Okay. I will let you. This is fine. Carson, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it's less of a recommendation and more of like an enforcement. Like most people that I've met who haven't watched Star Wars, it's like, we're going to watch Star Wars now. Like this is a thing we're going to do. And it's less of a question of if we're going to, and it's how you go to. And what I've landed on is the correct way to introduce someone to Star Wars is 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. And so I think that's called the machete cut.
Mhm.
And so that's what I generally recommend people to watch it in. But I agree with Paulo that it's like, you do need to set some expectations because if you hype something up that big and then they're watching episode 2 and some of that dialogue, you got to be like, okay, I know, okay, don't judge me too much on this.
Yeah, yeah. I do have a caveat. Like the thing is, if people have watched Star Wars, the original series, or have watched one of the TV shows, and they're like, I like it, I'd be like, look, there are these prequel movies that shed some light. You can watch them. They're not good, but you can watch them to get some background. Uh, but if you want to call me and complain about it after you watch it, I'm here for you. It's fine. I
Yeah,
think that's
when
right.
I made my wife watch all 6 movies, I definitely had like a whiteboard and would be like explaining stuff as the movies were going on. It's like, I understand that this is a bad movie, but I need to explain why this is important to me.
Yes, yeah. Because yeah, all of that stuff gets explained outside of the movie, really. There's a lot of nitpicky things that get explained outside, which yeah, throws you off a little bit. It's okay. Well, I mean, that was our relatively quote unquote short discussion about these movies. Uh, but yes, no, thank you both for coming on. This was a lot of fun. I like when I have discussions where we have differing opinions on something. It makes it more lively, I think. So that was definitely this. But where can people, find you guys and your podcast and your posts and all that kind of stuff?
So we're on Instagram. Carson's pointing. We're on Instagram. You can find us at the Fan and the Critic. We are also on any platform that you can find podcasts. Carson, I don't know if I'm missing. We have a Twitter, but we don't use it.
Yeah,
um,
the only thing I'll say is that I feel like our audience would be confused by our dynamic because based on this conversation, it seems like I'm the fan and Paulo's the critic,
yeah,
but usually our conversation is the other way around.
yeah, which is why this was actually so interesting. And even with you, Tracy, this did not go how I thought it was going to go,
Really?
which
Okay.
is super fun. Yeah.
See, I like to switch it up on people a little bit. Yes, a little crazy. Well, again, thank you so much. Listeners, check out The Fan and the Critic after you listen to this episode, obviously. Uh, but we'll probably have you guys on again for some other amazing discussion. Thanks so much.
Please do. Thanks for having
Thanks for
us.
having us.
Well, that's it for this episode of Off My Shelf. Until next time, you can follow along on Instagram and Twitter at ohmyshelf, or you can send an email to ohmyshelf@gmail.com. This episode was produced and edited by me, Tracy, with original theme song by Ori Falconer. Like, subscribe, leave a comment wherever you listen to this podcast. Come back next time to see what falls off my shelf.